She was rejected on the night she should have been claimed, but what they threw away became their worst nightmare. Tonight, you'll witness the fall of an alpha who thought rejection was his right, and the brutal rise of the woman who made him regret every word. This is the story of Selene Ashcroft, the mate who was publicly humiliated, cast out to die, and came back as something no pack had ever seen before. Stay until the end to see how she destroys the man who destroyed her. Drop a like if you're ready for revenge, and comment what city you're watching from. The bonfire roared against the night sky, throwing shadows across hundreds of faces gathered in the ceremonial grounds of Blackthorn Ridge. Selene Ashcroft stood at the edge of the inner circle, her hands trembling despite every effort to still them. The claiming ceremony happened once every 5 years, when fated mates were bound before the pack, their connection recognized and blessed by ancient law. Tonight was supposed to be hers. The bond had snapped into place 3 months ago, sudden and absolute, during a routine patrol. She'd been checking the northern border when the scent hit her, pine and smoke and something wild she couldn't name. Then she'd seen him, Ronan Varick, the alpha of Blackthorn Ridge, standing on a ridge overlooking the valley. Their eyes met across the distance, and the world tilted. The mate bond was sacred, unbreakable, chosen by forces older than the packs themselves, or so she'd believed. Selene wore the traditional white ceremonial dress, simple and unadorned, as custom demanded. Her dark hair fell loose down her back. She wore no jewelry, no adornment. The claiming ceremony stripped away everything but the bond itself. Around her, other mated pairs stood together, hands joined, eyes bright with anticipation. She stood alone. Ronan was late. The pack's council of elders sat on raised platforms, their weathered faces impassive. Elder Bran, the oldest among them, gestured for silence. The crowd noise dimmed to whispers. "We gather under the old laws," Bran's voice carried across the grounds, rough as gravel. "To witness the bonds fate has woven, to honor the connections that strengthen our blood and our future." One by one, the mated pairs stepped forward. The ceremony was simple. The alpha or his designated representative acknowledged the bond, spoke the claiming words, and marked their mate with a bite to the shoulder. Public. Permanent. Binding. Selene watched Marcus Thorne claim his mate, a sharp-eyed woman named Kira who'd come from the Eastern Territories. The crowd cheered. She watched Devin Cole, one of Ronan's lieutenants, claim his second-chance mate after losing his first to a rogue attack 2 years ago. More cheers. Her turn approached. Elder Brand's eyes found hers across the gathering. Selene Ashcroft, daughter of the Ashcroft line, stepped forward. The crowd parted as she walked to the center of the circle. The bonfire heat washed over her. Hundreds of eyes tracked her movement. She could hear whispers, speculation. The Ashcroft line had once been strong. Her grandfather had served as beta under Ronan's father, but that was before her father's death in a border skirmish that some called preventable, before her mother's grief-driven withdrawal from pack life, before Selene herself proved unremarkable in every way that mattered to wolves who valued strength above all else. She wasn't the weakest wolf in Blackthorn Ridge, but she wasn't far from it. Her wolf was small, her healing slower than average, her combat skills adequate at best. She'd spent her life trying to compensate, working harder, training longer, never complaining. It hadn't been enough to earn respect. But the bond didn't care about strength or status. It chose what it chose. "Ronan Varick, alpha of Blackthorn Ridge," Elder Brand called. "Step forward to claim your mate." Silence. Selene's heart hammered against her ribs. She scanned the crowd, searching for that familiar dark hair, those cold gray eyes. Nothing. Then movement at the far edge of the gathering. The crowd shifted, creating a path. And there he was. Ronan Varick walked like he owned every inch of ground beneath his feet, because he did. 6'3", broad-shouldered, moving with the controlled grace of a predator who'd never known fear. His dark hair was tied back from a face all hard angles and sharper edges. But it was his eyes that marked him as alpha, gray as winter storms and twice as cold. Eyes that had seen blood and called for more. He wore black, not the ceremonial whites. That was the first sign. The second was the woman at his side. Mira Calder walked half a step behind Ronan, her hand resting possessively on his arm. She was everything Selene wasn't: tall, powerful, a ranked warrior with more confirmed kills than any other female in the pack. Her blonde hair caught the firelight. She smiled, showing teeth. Selene's stomach dropped. Ronan stopped at the edge of the inner circle but didn't step inside, didn't approach. The distance between them felt like a chasm. Alpha Varric, Elderbrand's voice held a note of confusion. The claiming, I reject this bond. Ronan's voice cut through the night like a blade. Clear, certain, loud enough for every wolf present to hear. I reject Selene Ashcroft as my mate. The words hit like physical blows. Around the circle, people gasped. Someone cursed. Selene stood frozen, unable to process what she'd just heard. Rejection was possible, technically. The old laws allowed it in extreme circumstances. If a mate was proven traitor. If they'd committed crimes against the pack. If they were unable to fulfill their duties due to permanent injury or madness. But casual rejection? Rejecting a bond simply because you didn't want it? That was unheard of. You can't! The words left Selene's mouth before she could stop them. Quiet. Almost a whisper. The bond is a leash I won't wear. Ronan's eyes met hers, and there wasn't a trace of warmth in them. No conflict, no regret. Blackthorn Ridge needs strength. We need powerful alliances, strong bloodlines, warriors who can defend our borders and expand our territory. You offer none of that. Each word landed like a stone. The crowd had gone completely silent now, every ear straining to catch this unprecedented drama. Look at yourself, Ronan continued, his voice dropping into something almost conversational, which somehow made it worse, more personal. You're weak. Your wolf is barely worth acknowledging. Your family line has produced nothing of value in 2 generations. You have no skills, no power, no influence worth preserving. The bond doesn't care about, Selene started. I care. Ronan's voice hardened again. I care about the future of this pack. I care about the children I'll produce and what kind of legacy I leave them, and I refuse to saddle them with weak blood. Mira's smile widened. Her grip on Ronan's arm tightened possessively. Elderbrand stood, his old face creased with disapproval. Alpha Varric, this is highly irregular. The mate bond is sacred law. To reject it without cause, I am the law in Blackthorn Ridge. Ronan's tone allowed no argument. The old ways served their purpose, but times change. We face threats on all borders, rogue packs, human expansion, rival territories looking for weakness. I need a strong mate, a partner who brings value to the alpha position. He gestured to Mira. This is who should stand at my side. Warrior, strategist, from a bloodline that's proven its worth in combat. Not some... He looked at Selene with something close to disgust. Not some fragile thing who'd break under the first real challenge. The shame was a living thing, crawling under Selene's skin. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, could hear the whispers starting. Some wolves looked shocked. Others nodded, agreeing with their alpha's assessment. You feel it, though, Selene said, and hated how small her voice sounded. The bond. You feel it pulling. I feel an inconvenience. Ronan cut her off. A biological quirk that would weaken everything I've built, so I'm correcting fate's mistake. This will damage you. Elderbrand's voice held warning. Rejecting a true mate bond has consequences. The wolf suffers. Your strength could... My strength comes from will, not mystical bonds. Ronan's jaw set. I've made my decision. Selene Ashcroft is not and will never be my mate. I cast her out of consideration for the alpha's mate position. I deny the bond. I refuse the claim. The formal words of rejection. Once spoken publicly, before witnesses, they couldn't be taken back. Selene felt something tear inside her chest. The bond didn't break. That wasn't possible. But it twisted, turned jagged. The connection she'd felt to Ronan for 3 months, that invisible thread that had made her feel less alone, suddenly became a wound. Every pull toward him hurt. Every instinct that said mine now screamed in confused agony. She staggered, caught herself, refused to fall in front of these people. Furthermore, Ronan continued, and something in his tone made Selene's head snap up. I'm removing the Ashcroft line from pack protection. Now even the sympathetic faces looked shocked. That's exile, someone in the crowd breathed. That's death, someone else added. Removing pack protection meant exactly what it sounded like. No pack resources, no pack territory, no pack defense. For a wolf, especially a weaker wolf, it was essentially a death sentence. Lone wolves didn't survive long in the frontier territories. Rogues would kill them. Rival packs would hunt them for sport. The wilderness itself would grind them down. "You're condemning her to die," Elder Brand said flatly, "for the crime of being chosen as your mate. I'm removing dead weight from Blackthorn Ridge." Ronan's expression didn't change. "She has until dawn to leave Packlands. After that, if she's found within our borders, she'll be treated as a rogue and hunted accordingly." Mira leaned in, whispered something in Ronan's ear. He smiled. It wasn't a kind expression. "One more thing." Ronan's eyes fixed on Selene again. "So there's no confusion, no hope you might cling to that would make you stupid enough to return. So everyone here understands exactly where you stand." He pulled Mira forward, his hand sliding to the back of her neck. And in front of the entire pack, in the middle of the sacred claiming ceremony, he kissed her. Deep, possessive, claiming. When he pulled back, Mira's eyes glittered with triumph. "This," Ronan announced, "is the woman who will stand beside me, strong, powerful, worthy of the Alpha's mate position. Not through some accident of fate, but through proven merit." The crowd erupted. Some cheering, many more silent, a few voices raised in protest. Elder Brand sat down heavily, shaking his head. The other elders looked between themselves, clearly unsure how to handle this unprecedented situation. Selene stood in the center of it all, the white dress suddenly feeling like a target. The bonfire heat felt too hot. The eyes felt too sharp. Everything was too much. "Leave," Ronan's voice cut through the chaos. "You're done here. You're nothing here. And if I see you again, I won't show mercy a second time." Pride was all she had left. Selene pulled herself straight, lifted her chin. She wouldn't cry, wouldn't beg, wouldn't give them any more ammunition. She turned and walked through the crowd. They parted for her like she carried disease. Some faces showed pity. Most showed indifference. A few showed relief. One less weak wolf to drag down the pack's reputation. Maya intercepted her at the edge of the gathering. Her best friend, her only real friend, grabbed her arm. "Selene, wait. You can't just... Where will you go?" "I don't know." The words came out steady somehow. "But I have until dawn." "This is insane. The council will stop this. They have to." Selene looked back at the ceremonial grounds. Ronan had his arm around Mira, already moving on like Selene had never existed. The council sat in their places, talking among themselves but making no moves to intervene. The pack was already adapting to this new reality. "No one's stopping anything," Selene said quietly. "He's right about one thing. He is the law here. Then I'll come with you." Maya's grip tightened. "We'll figure something out together. You have family here, a life, a future." Selene pulled her arm free gently. "I won't take that from you." "Selene, I'll be fine." The lie tasted bitter. "I just need to get my things and go." She walked away before Maya could argue further, before the tears she was holding back could break free, before the reality of what had just happened could fully crash down on her. Her small cabin sat at the eastern edge of pack territory, nearly a mile from the main compound. Her father had built it when he'd still been beta, wanting space and quiet. After his death, the main family had moved to smaller housing, but no one had wanted this place. Too remote, too isolated. Now Selene was grateful for the isolation. She moved through the single room mechanically. Clothes in a backpack, the worn photo of her parents, a knife her grandfather had given her, good steel, sharp edge, maybe worth trading if she got desperate enough. Money she'd been saving for, she couldn't remember what. It wouldn't last long. The door opened without warning. Selene spun, hand going to the knife. But it was just Maya, tears streaming down her face. "I hate him," her friend said simply. "I hate what he did to you." "Yeah," Selene turned back to her packing. "Well, hating him won't change anything. The pack is split. Half think he was within his rights as alpha, half think he just committed the worst kind of betrayal." Maya moved closer. "There are people who'd help you if you stayed, who'd stand with you." "And get exiled themselves? Lose pack protection?" Selene shook her head. "No, I won't ask that." So you're just leaving? Just accepting this? Selene paused, her hand still on the backpack. Was she accepting it? Or was she just too shocked, too hurt, too overwhelmed to fight back? What choice do I have? She asked quietly. He rejected the bond in front of everyone, made me an outsider in my own home. If I stay and fight, I'm alone against an entire pack, against an alpha who's already proven he sees me as nothing. You're not nothing. To him, I am. Selene zipped the backpack closed, and that's all that matters in Blackthorn Ridge. Maya pulled her into a fierce hug. For a moment, Selene let herself lean into it, let herself feel the support of someone who still saw her as worth something. Then she pulled away. You need to go. If anyone sees you helping me, I don't care. I do. Selene managed a small smile. Go back to the ceremony. Pretend you barely knew me. Survive. This isn't the end. Maya's voice held fierce certainty. I don't know how, but you're going to come back from this. You're stronger than any of them know. Selene didn't argue, didn't correct her, just nodded and watched her friend slip back out into the night. Then she was alone. The bond twisted in her chest, a constant ache pulling her back toward Ronan, toward the pack, toward the home she was being forced to leave. She'd heard stories about rejected mates, how the pain never really stopped, how the bond turned into a permanent wound that never quite healed. She had hours until dawn. After that, if she was found within Blackthorn Ridge territory, Ronan's hunters would kill her as a rogue. Selene shouldered her backpack, took one last look at the cabin that had been her home, and stepped out into the night. The forest was dark beyond the pack's protective borders. No patrols, no marked trails, just wilderness that didn't care whether she lived or died. She walked north, away from everything she'd known. The trees closed in around her. The sounds of the pack celebration faded behind her, and with each step, a small part of her died. The part that had believed in fate, the part that had trusted in bonds and destiny, the part that had thought being chosen by an alpha meant something. That part was gone, burned away by public humiliation and casual cruelty. What was left was smaller, harder, and learning very quickly that the world didn't reward hope. It rewarded survival. 3 days into exile, Selene realized she was being hunted. She'd made it further than expected, nearly 40 miles north of Blackthorn Ridge, through dense forest and across 2 rivers. Her wolf was small, but she was smart enough to cover her trail, to move through water when possible, to avoid leaving obvious signs of passage. But someone was following her anyway. She first noticed at dusk on the 3rd day. A scent on the wind, too deliberate to be coincidence. Wolf, but not one she recognized. The smell kept appearing and disappearing, always downwind, always distant enough to avoid direct contact. Tracking her, hurting her. Selene's hand went to the knife at her belt. She was no fighter. Ronan had been right about that, however cruel his delivery. In a straight combat against another wolf, especially a trained hunter, she'd lose. So she wouldn't fight straight. The territory she'd entered was unclaimed, a buffer zone between Blackthorn Ridge and the northern territories controlled by the Ironwood Pack. Neutral ground, dangerous ground. The kind of place rogues gathered because no established pack wanted to waste resources patrolling it. Perfect place for an ambush. Selene found a rocky outcropping that put her back against stone and gave her sight lines in 3 directions. Not perfect, but better than open ground. She settled in as darkness fell, knife ready, ears straining for any sound. The attack came just before midnight. She heard them coming, 3 wolves, moving with coordinated precision. Not rogues, then. Trained pack hunters. Blackthorn Ridge hunters. They shifted into human form as they approached, a tactical choice that let them speak. 3 men she recognized from training sessions. Marcus Thorne, the newly mated warrior who'd been at the ceremony. Devon Cole, one of Ronan's lieutenants, and Garrett, a younger hunter looking to prove himself. Selene Ashcroft. Devon's voice was almost apologetic. You were supposed to be gone. Off our territory entirely. I am off your territory. Selene stayed very still, knife visible but not threatening. This is neutral ground. Alpha's orders were clear. Marcus stepped forward. You're to be driven further out, northern territories, Ironwood Pack lands. That's a death sentence. The Ironwood Pack was known for killing trespassers on sight. You might as well just kill me here. We could, Garrett said, and something eager in his tone made Selene's skin crawl. Alpha said if we found you within 50 miles of Blackthorn Ridge, we could handle you as a rogue threat. 50 miles? Selene's anger cut through the fear. That wasn't the deal. He said dawn. He said outside Packlands. Things change. Devon shrugged. Alpha wants you gone. Really gone. Far enough that you'll never consider coming back. I wasn't planning on coming back. Good. Marcus's expression was unreadable. Then you won't mind moving along, north, now. We'll escort you to the Ironwood border and make sure you cross it. This was an execution. They'd walk her to Ironwood lands, push her across, and let Ironwood hunters do the dirty work. No blood on Blackthorn Ridge hands. Deniable. Clean. No. The word came out steady despite the terror clawing at her throat. All three men tensed. That's not a request, Devon said. I know. Selene's grip tightened on her knife. But I'm not going north. You think you can fight all three of us? Garrett laughed. You're barely a wolf. This is suicide. Probably. Selene smiled, and it wasn't a happy expression. But if I'm dying anyway, I'm taking someone with me. The confidence in her voice made them hesitate. It was a bluff, mostly. She couldn't beat 3 trained hunters, but she could hurt one. Make them pay a price. Die on her terms instead of theirs. Marcus and Devon exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. We're not here to kill you, Marcus said finally, just to relocate you. North is death. I won't go willingly. Then we'll drag you. Garrett stepped forward. Devon held up a hand, stopping him. Wait. His eyes studied Selene with something that might have been respect. You know the Eastern Territories? Where the old mining operations used to be? Selene nodded carefully. There's a settlement there. Rogues, mostly. Outcasts. Pack rejects who didn't want to go full feral. Devon's tone was neutral. It's rough. Violent. But they don't kill on sight, and if you can prove yourself useful, they might let you stay. Why are you telling me this? Selene asked. Because I remember your father. Marcus spoke up quietly. He saved my life once, during the border wars. And this? He gestured vaguely. This whole situation is wrong. I won't disobey Alpha's orders, but I can give you a better option than dying in Ironwood territory. Garrett looked between them. This is bullshit. Orders were to get her out of the region. Devon cut him off. East is out. North is out. West is out. We're following orders. Alpha's going to ask questions if... Then let him ask. Marcus's voice hardened. We drove her out. Mission accomplished. What happens after that isn't our concern. The 2 older hunters stared Garrett down until he backed off, muttering under his breath. Devon looked back at Selene. East. 2 days' travel. Look for old mining equipment near a river fork. The settlement's hidden in the valley beyond. Don't mention Blackthorn Ridge. Don't mention your name. Just say you're rogue and looking for a place to lay low. Why would they take me? They might not. Devon's honesty was brutal. But it's a better chance than you'll get anywhere else. It was more than she'd expected. More mercy than she deserved after Ronan's public rejection. Selene nodded slowly. Thank you. Don't thank us. Marcus turned away. Just survive. Somehow. And don't come back. The 3 hunters melted back into the forest, leaving Selene alone with her racing heart and the knowledge that she'd just been given an unexpected gift. A chance. However slim. She moved east before they could change their minds. The rogue settlement was worse than she'd imagined. Selene found it 2 days later, exhausted and running on adrenaline. The old mining equipment was exactly where Devon said it would be. Rusted metal structures slowly being reclaimed by forest. Beyond that, hidden in a valley surrounded by steep hills, a collection of ramshackle buildings clustered around a central clearing. 40, maybe 50 structures. Some were actual buildings scavenged and repaired. Others were lean-tos, tents, or holes dug into hillsides and covered with tarps. Smoke from cooking fires hung in the air. The smell of too many wolves in too small a space was overwhelming. This was where the broken ended up. Rogues who'd been exiled for crimes, wolves who'd lost their packs to violence or disease. Second and third sons with no inheritance. Females who'd fled abusive mates. The desperate and the dangerous, all pressed together in a place that somehow survived by not quite destroying itself. Selene approached slowly, hands visible and empty. A dozen wolves noticed her immediately. Guards, probably. Hard-faced women and scarred men who looked like they'd seen every kind of violence. A tall woman with a burned face stepped forward. "You lost?" "Looking for a place to stay." Selene kept her voice steady. "Heard this settlement sometimes takes in rogues." "Sometimes." The woman's eyes traveled over Selene, assessing. "What's your story?" "Pack kicked me out. I'm alone. Need somewhere to survive." "Name?" Selene hesitated. Devon had said not to mention Blackthorn Ridge, not to use her real name. She searched for something, anything. "Ash," she said finally, close enough to Ashcroft to feel true, different enough to provide cover. "Just Ash." The burned woman smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Just Ash who got kicked out of her pack. Must have done something interesting to deserve exile. Wasn't strong enough. The truth, if not all of it. Didn't fit." The woman gestured to the settlement. "This is Greyvale. We don't use real names here. We don't ask about pasts. We don't care what you did or where you came from. You work, you follow the rules, you can stay. You cause problems, you're out. Or dead, depending." "What are the rules?" "No stealing from residents, no killing without cause. Contribute to the community. Hunting, building, security, whatever you're good at. And pay rent." "Rent?" "This isn't charity. Council takes a cut of everything you earn to maintain the settlement. Food, shelter, security. It all costs." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You got money?" Selene thought of the small amount she'd brought from Blackthorn Ridge. "Some. That'll get you a week. Maybe 2 if you're careful. After that, you better figure out how to be useful, or you're gone." It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had an hour ago. "I accept," Selene said. The woman nodded. "Name's Torch. I run security. Welcome to the bottom, just Ash. Try not to die too quick, chap." The first week was survival in its rawest form. Selene rented a corner of a shared shelter, barely 8 feet square, which she split with 3 other females. One was a young wolf named Kira, who'd run from an arranged mating. Another was an older woman called Sage, who barely spoke. The third was Rita, sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, who made it clear she'd gut anyone who touched her stuff. They weren't friends, weren't even particularly civil, but they coexisted in the tense peace that defined Greyvale. Selene spent her days trying to find work. She wasn't strong enough for the heavy labor crews, wasn't skilled enough for the craftspeople, wasn't mean enough for security. What she could do was organize. She noticed it the 3rd day, watching the settlement's market, a chaotic mess where wolves bartered and traded goods. No system, no order. People shouting over each other, deals falling through because no one could keep track of who owed what to whom. Selene had always been good with details, with logistics. It was part of why she'd been assigned to Border Patrol in Blackthorn Ridge. She remembered routes, noticed patterns, tracked supplies. She approached the wolf who seemed to run the market, a grizzled man called Flint. "Your system's broken," she told him bluntly. Flint looked her over. "You offering criticism or solutions?" "Solutions. Let me organize it. Track trades, set up a ledger system, create set trading times so people aren't negotiating at cross purposes. I'll take 5% of what you're currently losing to chaos." "Why would I trust some rogue pup?" "Because right now you're losing 20% to confusion, theft, and failed trades. 5% of what you're currently making is better than 20% of nothing." Flint studied her for a long moment. Then he laughed. "You got spine. I'll give you 3 days. Prove you can do what you say, and we'll talk terms." Selene organized the market in 2 days. She created a simple ledger system using scavenged paper and charcoal, set up designated trading hours, established a reputation board where wolves could report cheats and thieves. Nothing fancy, nothing that required resources Greyvale didn't have. But it worked. Trades happened faster, disputes dropped. Wolves who'd been losing goods to theft started seeing better returns. And Flint's profits went up enough that he agreed to her terms. 5% of the market operation paid weekly. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cover her rent and buy food. For the first time since leaving Blackthorn Ridge, Selene breathed slightly easier. But survival wasn't the same as living. The bond still ached constantly. a dull pain that flared whenever she let her guard down. At night, she'd sometimes dream of the ceremony, of Ronan's cold eyes, of Mira's triumphant smile. She'd wake with tears on her face and anger burning in her chest. The anger was new, or maybe it had always been there, and she'd finally stopped pushing it down. She'd spent her whole life trying to be good enough, to compensate for being weaker, to prove she had value despite her limitations, and none of it had mattered. Ronan had looked at her and seen only what she lacked, never what she was. The rejection shouldn't have been possible. The mate bond was supposed to be sacred, unbreakable, fate's gift. But fate, it turned out, could be dismissed as easily as anything else if you had enough power. Selene began to understand something in those long nights in Greyvale. The world didn't care about fairness, about bonds or destiny or sacred law. Power made the rules. And she had none. Not yet. But that could change. She watched the stronger wolves in Greyvale, how they moved, how they fought, how they commanded respect through force or cunning, or both. She watched Torch run security with brutal efficiency. She watched Flint manipulate the market to his advantage. She watched Rita defend her space with such vicious certainty that even larger wolves gave her room. And slowly, very slowly, Selene began to learn, not just how to survive, but how to adapt, how to find leverage where none seemed to exist, how to turn weaknesses into weapons. The bond still hurt, still pulled at her constantly, a reminder of what had been ripped away. But pain, she was discovering, could be useful if you let it burn instead of consuming you, if you channeled it into something sharp and focused. Ronan had called her weak, unworthy, nothing. She was beginning to think he'd made a mistake. Not in rejecting her, that wound went too deep to forgive, but in thinking she'd simply disappear, that exile would erase her, that she'd fade into the wilderness and die quietly, forgotten. 1 month into her exile, Selene stood at the edge of Greyvale and looked south, toward Blackthorn Ridge, too far to see but close enough to feel through the bond. "I'm not done," she whispered to the wind, to the bond, to the ghost of the girl she'd been at the claiming ceremony. She didn't know what came next, didn't have a plan, didn't even know if survival was truly possible long term. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would not fade quietly, would not be forgotten, would not disappear into nothing like Ronan wanted. She'd survive this, somehow. And when she did, if she did, she'd make sure every wolf in Blackthorn Ridge learned her name. Not as the rejected mate, not as the weak Ashcroft girl, as something else entirely, something they'd wish they'd never created. 3 months in Greyvale taught Selene that survival and respect were different currencies entirely. She had the first. Her work organizing the market had earned her enough to keep a roof overhead and food in her stomach. Flint paid on time, and she'd even managed to save a small amount. By rogue settlement standards, she was doing well. But respect? That required something else. She learned this the hard way when 2 wolves cornered her behind the storage sheds on a cold November morning. The first was a massive male named Crag, 6'5" of muscle and scar tissue, with a reputation for breaking bones when he got bored. The second was his partner, a wiry female called Vex, who was known for being even meaner than Crag despite being half his size. "Heard you're making good money off that market," Craig said, blocking her path. "Real organized, real profitable." Selene's hand moved to her knife, but she didn't draw it. Not yet. "I work for Flint. You've got a problem with the arrangement, take it up with him." "See, that's the thing." Vex circled around behind her, cutting off the escape route. "Flint's old, getting soft, and we've been thinking maybe the market could use new management, younger management, stronger management. You want to take over the market? Go ahead." Selene kept her voice level. "I just run the ledgers. I don't care who signs my pay." "Smart." Craig smiled, showing too many teeth. "But here's the problem. We don't need someone running ledgers. That's weak work. Rogue work. We're pack." "You're exiled pack," Selene corrected before she could stop herself. "Same as everyone else here." Vex moved fast, grabbing Selene's arm and twisting it behind her back. Pain shot up to her shoulder. "You got a mouth on you. That's going to be a problem." Selene didn't struggle. Struggling against someone stronger just gave them leverage. She'd learned that in her first week. "What do you want?" "Your cooperation." Craig leaned in close. His breath smelled like old meat. "When we take over the market, you're going to tell Flint you quit. going to recommend us. Make it smooth. And if I don't? Then accidents happen. Vex twisted harder. Greyvale's dangerous. People get hurt all the time. Be a shame if you were one of them. It was a simple shakedown, crude but effective. They had the strength to hurt her, and everyone knew it. If she reported them to Torch, it would be her word against theirs. And who was she? A nobody rogue who'd been here 3 months versus 2 wolves who'd been in Greyvale for years. The old Selene would have agreed, would have given them what they wanted to avoid conflict, would have found another way to survive, even if it meant starting from nothing again. But that version of her had died at the claiming ceremony. No, Selene said quietly. Craig's eyebrows rose. What? I said no. You want the market, you take it from Flint yourself. I'm not helping you. Vex laughed. You think you got a choice? Everyone's got choices. Selene met Craig's eyes directly. You can beat me. Probably break a few bones. Maybe even kill me if you're feeling ambitious. But I won't help you, and everyone in Greyvale will know exactly what you did and why. You think they'll care? Craig asked. I think Torch will care that you're starting fights on settlement grounds. I think Flint will care that you threatened his employee. I think the council will care that you're disrupting business. Selene's voice stayed steady despite the pain in her arm. And even if they don't, even if you get away with it, you'll have proven you need to threaten and beat a weak rogue to get what you want, real strong management material. Craig's expression darkened. For a moment, Selene thought she'd miscalculated, that he'd just kill her here and deal with the consequences later. Then Vex released her arm and stepped back. This one's got more spine than sense. Clearly, Craig studied Selene like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You know we could make your life hell. You could. Selene rubbed her shoulder where Vex had grabbed her. But then you'd be spending all your time and energy on me instead of taking the market. Seems inefficient. A long silence stretched between them. Then, unexpectedly, Craig laughed. You're either brave or stupid. Haven't figured out which yet. Can it be both? That got a smile from Vex. Maybe we've been approaching this wrong. You clearly got some brains in that head. How about this? You help us take the market, and we cut you in, 20% of profits. I already make 5% for a quarter of the work and none of the risk, Selene pointed out. Why would I take that deal? Because we're offering partnership instead of a beating, Craig said flatly. That's not partnership, that's extortion with better packaging. Selene crossed her arms. But I'll make you a counteroffer. You want the market? Prove you can run it better than Flint. I'll track both operations for 1 month. End of the month, whichever operation is more profitable gets my full support, and I'll work for them exclusively. Vex frowned. That's fair, Selene interrupted. You say you're stronger, smarter, better management. Prove it. Beat Flint at his own game. Do that, and I'll tell everyone in Greyvale you earned it. Craig and Vex exchanged glances. Some silent communication passed between them. 1 month, Craig said finally. But if we win, you work for us. No arguments. Agreed. But if Flint wins, you back off. Permanently. Deal. Craig extended his hand. Selene shook it, knowing she'd just bought herself time at best, made powerful enemies at worst. But it was better than being beaten in an alley. They left without another word. Selene waited until they were gone before letting herself shake. Her arm throbbed where Vex had twisted it. Her heart hammered against her ribs. But she'd stood her ground, hadn't folded, hadn't given them what they wanted. It felt like a small victory in a place that didn't award many. She reported the encounter to Flint that afternoon. The old wolf listened without interrupting, his scarred face unreadable. You made them a deal, he said when she finished. I bought us a month. Figured that was better than a beating. Flint poured himself something that smelled like rot-gut whiskey. They're going to play dirty, undercut prices, threaten vendors, maybe steal from my suppliers. That's how wolves like Crag operate. I know. And you think I can beat them? Selene hesitated. Honesty might cost her, but lies would cost her more. I think you're smarter than they are, more connected, but they're younger and they've got a crew. This won't be easy. Flint smiled, showing gaps where teeth used to be. Nothing worth doing ever is. All right, pup. You want to play this game? Let's play. But you better be ready to work. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Over the next month, Selene got a brutal education in settlement economics and pack politics. Flint ran the market through a network of relationships built over years. He knew which wolves could be trusted, which needed watching, which would sell out for the right price. He'd done favors for half of Greyvale and collected debts from the other half. Craig and Vex ran their competing operation through intimidation and flashy deals. They'd set up in an empty lot on the far side of the settlement, offering better prices than Flint, at first, drawing in vendors who were tired of paying Flint's percentages. They're losing money on every transaction, Selene told Flint after the first week. Buying loyalty with unsustainable deals. Let them. Flint sorted through his ledgers. They've got capital from somewhere, probably savings from whatever pack they left. They'll burn through it trying to look successful. Then what? Then they'll have vendors who expect those prices. When they raise rates to actually make profit, those same vendors will be angry. Exactly. Flint tapped the ledger. Patience wins this game. They're playing for flash. We're playing for the long term. But Craig and Vex didn't just undercut prices. They started spreading rumors that Flint was skimming more than his share, that the ledgers were rigged, that Selene was helping him cheat vendors. Selene felt the shift in how wolves looked at her. Suspicion where there'd been neutral acceptance, hostility in places that had been safe. Rita, her shelter mate, cornered her one evening. People are saying you're running a scam with that old fox. People are wrong. Yeah, then show me the books. Prove it. Selene did. Spent an hour walking Rita through every transaction, every percentage, every split, showing her exactly how the system worked and where the money went. Rita studied the numbers, then grunted. All right, it's clean, but those two pricks are poisoning the well. You need to do something about that. Like what? Fight back. Spread your own rumors. Play their game. That just makes us look as dirty as them. Welcome to Greyvale. Rita's smile was sharp. No one here got halos. You want to win, you get your hands bloody. Selene thought about it, then shook her head. No. We proved them wrong by being better, by staying clean while they drown in their own mess. Your funeral. But Rita didn't look disapproving. For what it's worth. Takes guts to stick to principles in a place like this. Stupid guts, maybe. But guts. The real test came 3 weeks into the competition. Selene was doing evening inventory when a young wolf named Dax approached her. He was maybe 17, skinny, and nervous, one of the settlement scouts who ran errands for anyone paying. Need to talk to you, Dax said quietly. Private. They moved to the edge of the market. Dax kept looking over his shoulder. What's wrong? Selene asked. Crag and Vex. Dax's voice dropped to barely a whisper. They're planning something. Heard them talking tonight. They're going to raid Flint's supply cache, take his stored goods, sell them cheap at their market, make him look incompetent. Selene's blood ran cold. When? Tomorrow night, during the full moon gathering when everyone's distracted. Why are you telling me this? Dax met her eyes. Because you gave my sister work when no one else would. Because you've been fair when most wolves here aren't. And because Crag and Vex are dangerous. If they take over the market, people are going to get hurt. Selene believed him. Thank you. I'll handle it. Be careful. Dax melted back into the crowd. Selene found Flint and told him everything. The old wolf's expression went dark. They're going to steal months of supplies, ruin me financially and reputation-wise in one night. Flint's hands clenched. We need to stop them. We need proof, Selene corrected. If we accuse them without evidence, it's our word against theirs. But if we catch them in the act, then we take it to the council. Flint nodded slowly. Smart, but dangerous. If they realize we know, they might move up the timeline or come after us directly. So we don't let them realize. Selene's mind worked through possibilities. We set a trap. Let them think they're getting away with it, then spring it when they're committed. They spent the next day preparing. Flint moved his most valuable supplies to a secondary location, left decoys in the main cache, goods that looked valuable but were actually cheap or damaged, and they arranged for witnesses. Torch, the security chief, was brought into the plan. She didn't like Flint much, but she liked thieves even less. You're sure about this? Dax heard them planning it, Selene said, and it fits their pattern. They've been burning through capital. Need a big score to stay competitive. If you're wrong, you're going to look like you're manufacturing evidence against competitors. If we're wrong, we'll accept the consequences. Flint's voice was steady. But we're not wrong. The full moon gathering was Greyvale's monthly celebration, what passed for community in a settlement of exiles. Wolves gathered around central fires, trading stories and scarce luxuries, pretending for a few hours that they were more than just survivors clinging to the edge. Selene attended, forcing herself to socialize when every instinct screamed to be at the supply cache. She saw Crag and Vex there, laughing with their crew, playing the part of successful merchants. Around midnight, she noticed them slip away. So did 4 of their associates. Selene found Torch. The security chief nodded and gestured to her own people. 6 wolves who moved like trained fighters. Together they followed at a careful distance. The supply cache was a reinforced shed at the settlement's eastern edge. Selene and Torch's team positioned themselves in the surrounding shadows, watching. Craig's crew moved with practiced efficiency. 1 picked the lock, 2 stood watch. Craig and Vex went inside. "Now?" whispered one of Torch's wolves. "Wait," Torch murmured. "Let them commit." Minutes passed. Then Crag and Vex emerged carrying armloads of goods, the decoy supplies Flint had left. "That's theft," Torch said, loud and clear. Craig spun, dropping half of what he carried. For a moment, everyone froze. Then Vex moved. Fast as a snake, she went for Torch, clearly planning to fight their way out. But Torch had trained with actual pack warriors. She sidestepped Vex's attack, caught her arm, and slammed her face first into the dirt. "Don't!" Craig's crew looked at each other, at Torch's fighters, at the stolen goods scattered across the ground. "This is a setup," Craig said. His voice was calm, but his eyes promised violence. "You planted evidence. We planted our own supplies in our own cache." Torch hauled Vex to her feet. "You broke in and stole them. That's the reality." "Who's going to believe you? You're Flint's ally." "Them." Selene stepped forward, gesturing to the crowd that had started to gather. Word spread fast in Greyvale. Dozens of wolves had followed to watch the drama unfold. "You said you wanted to prove you were better management, better leaders. This is what you prove instead? That you're thieves?" "We were taking what should have been ours," Vex spat, blood running from her nose. "That old bastard's been running this place too long." "So challenge him properly." Selene's anger cut through. "Compete fairly, win on merit. Don't steal in the night like cowards and call it business." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Selene could see the shift, wolves who'd been considering switching to Crag's market now looking disgusted. Even in Greyvale, there were lines. Theft from settlement stores was different from competition. "The council will hear about this," Torch said. "You're done." Craig's expression went cold and deadly. "This isn't over." "Yeah," Selene said quietly. "It is." The council met the next morning. Greyvale's ruling body consisted of 5 wolves, Torch for security, Flint for commerce, and 3 others representing housing, resource management, and dispute resolution. Craig and Vex were brought before them. The evidence was presented. Witnesses testified. The verdict was unanimous: exile from Greyvale. "You've got 6 hours to pack and leave," the council leader announced. "After that, you're trespassing. Torch's people will remove you by force if necessary." Craig stood slowly. His eyes found Selene in the crowd. "You made an enemy today." "I already had one." Selene didn't flinch. "Now I just don't have to pretend otherwise." They left before the 6 hours were up. Their crew scattered. Some left with them, others stayed and tried to blend back into settlement life. The market war was over. Flint celebrated by giving Selene a raise. 15% now. You earned it." "I just helped catch thieves." "You did more than that." Flint's old eyes studied her. "You showed you got a spine. That you'll stand up to wolves twice your size when it matters. That's rare here. Hell, that's rare anywhere." Selene felt the weight of that praise. It meant something in Greyvale. Recognition from someone who'd survived decades in this brutal place. But the victory felt hollow. Because standing up to Craig and Vex had required help, required Torch and Flint and witnesses. She hadn't won through her own strength, just through better tactics and more allies. And deep down, the bond still ached. Still reminded her that in the world outside Greyvale, she'd been deemed worthless by the one wolf who should have valued her most. She was surviving, building something resembling a life. But survival wasn't enough anymore. 2 weeks after Craig and Vex's exile, something strange started happening. Selene noticed it first during a routine supply run to the Eastern Territories. She'd been negotiating with a traveling merchant for winter goods when the man suddenly stopped mid-sentence, his eyes going distant. "You feel that?" he asked. "Feel what?" But then she did feel it, a pull. Not like the bond that was always there, a constant ache in her chest. This was different, sharper, more insistent, like something inside her was reaching toward something outside. The merchant shook his head, breaking the moment. "Strange," thought I sensed. Never mind. Where were we? They completed the transaction, but Selene couldn't shake the feeling. It happened again that night, stronger. She was alone in the shelter when the pull intensified. Her wolf surged forward without warning, pressing against her skin like it wanted out. Selene gasped, forcing the shift back. She'd never had trouble controlling her wolf before. It was small, docile, rarely caused problems. This felt different, powerful, almost foreign. "You all right?" Rita asked from her corner. "Fine," Selene's voice came out strained. "Just tired." But she wasn't fine. Over the next few days, the episodes became more frequent. The pull would hit her at random moments, during market work, while eating, in the middle of conversations. Each time her wolf would surge, and each time Selene would have to fight to maintain control. It was exhausting and terrifying, because the power she felt during those surges wasn't hers, couldn't be hers. She was weak, always had been. That was the fundamental truth of her existence. Except now something inside her was calling that truth into question. Torch noticed on the 5th day. "You're jumpy. What's going on?" "Nothing." "That's a lie." Torch's eyes narrowed. "I've seen wolves lose control before. You're showing the signs. If you're going feral—" "I'm not going feral." Selene's voice came out sharper than intended. "It's just something's changing. I don't know what." "Then figure it out." Torch's tone softened slightly. "Before it figures you out first, uncontrolled power in a place like this, that gets you killed or exiled, sometimes both." Selene knew she was right, but how did you figure out something you didn't understand? Something that shouldn't exist in the first place? She sought out Sage, the older woman who shared their shelter. Sage rarely spoke, but she'd been in Greyvale longer than almost anyone. If anyone had seen this before, it would be her. "The pull," Selene said quietly, approaching Sage's corner. "The feeling like something's waking up inside you. Have you ever heard of that happening?" Sage looked up from the hide she was working. Her eyes were ancient, weathered by more years than Selene could guess. "Old blood," Sage said finally. Her voice was rough from disuse. "Dormant lines. Sometimes exile triggers them. Sometimes trauma. Sometimes just time." "What does that mean?" "Means your ancestors had power, real power. Not just strength or speed. Control, command. Things that scared the stronger wolves enough to make them forget the bloodlines existed." Sage's fingers worked the hide methodically. But blood remembers, even when minds don't. Selene's heart raced. "I don't have any power. I've always been weak. Or suppressed." Sage met her eyes. "Rejection breaks bonds. But sometimes it breaks other things too. Chains, limitations, things that were keeping you small. That's not possible." "You sure about that?" Sage returned to her work. "Because from where I'm sitting, you look like someone whose world is about to get a lot more complicated." The conversation stayed with Selene for days. She didn't believe it, couldn't believe it. Old blood and dormant power sounded like stories wolves told to make themselves feel special. Not reality. But the pulls kept coming, and they were getting stronger. 1 week after her conversation with Sage, Selene lost control for the first time. She was at the market, reviewing ledgers with Flint, when the pull hit like a physical blow. Her wolf surged forward with such force that she couldn't hold it back. But she didn't shift. That was the strange part. Instead, every wolf within 30 feet suddenly stopped what they were doing and looked at her. Not casual glances, direct, focused attention. Like she'd called them. Except she hadn't said a word. Selene? Flint's voice seemed to come from far away. What did you just do? I don't know. Her own voice sounded strange in her ears. Deeper, more resonant. The wolves were still staring. Some looked confused, others looked afraid. Then the moment broke. The pull released. The wolves shook themselves and went back to their business, most of them looking unsettled but uncertain why. Flint grabbed her arm. Inside. Now. He pulled her into the supply shed and shut the door. What was that? I told you. I don't know. Selene's hands were shaking. It's been happening for weeks. The pull. My wolf surging. But this time you commanded them. Flint's expression was grim. Every wolf in range felt it. I felt it. Like an alpha's call, but different. Stronger. I'm not an alpha. No, you're something else. Flint paced the small space. And that's a problem, because whatever you just did, that kind of power gets noticed, gets feared, and fear makes people do stupid things. What am I supposed to do? I can't control it, can't stop it. Then you better learn, fast. Flint's voice was urgent. Because if the council thinks you're a threat, they'll exile you. And if word spreads beyond Greyvale that some rogue has unexplained power, bigger packs will come looking, not to recruit you, to eliminate you. The fear in his voice was real. Selene had never seen Flint afraid before. How do I learn to control something I don't understand? No idea, but you better figure it out before it happens again in front of the wrong people. Selene spent the next 3 days avoiding the market and anyone who might have witnessed her loss of control. She stayed in the shelter or wandered the forest edges, trying to understand what was happening to her. The bond to Ronan was still there, always there, a constant reminder of rejection. But underneath it, something else was growing. Power that felt ancient and new at the same time. Like it had always been part of her, just waiting for the right circumstances to wake up. Sage's words echoed in her mind. Old blood, dormant lines, trauma triggering what had been suppressed. Could rejection really have broken something that fundamental? Freed something that had been chained? Selene didn't have answers, but she was starting to accept that she needed to find them. Because whatever was waking up inside her wasn't going to stay dormant. It was growing stronger with each passing day, and eventually she wouldn't be able to hide it anymore. The question was whether she learned to control it before it controlled her, or before someone decided she was too dangerous to let live. That night, alone at the settlement's edge, Selene felt the pull again. But this time, instead of fighting it, she let it come. Let her wolf surge forward without resistance. The power that flooded through her was intoxicating, terrifying, absolutely foreign, and yet somehow deeply familiar. For just a moment, she felt what it might be like to be strong. To have wolves respond to her presence not with dismissal, but with attention. Not with pity, but with wariness. For just a moment, she understood why Ronan had wanted power so badly, why he'd rejected her to preserve it. Then the moment passed. The power receded, and Selene was left gasping, her body shaking from the intensity of it. But something had shifted. Some decision had been made without her conscious awareness. She wasn't going to run from this, wasn't going to try to suppress it or pretend it wasn't happening. Whatever this power was, whatever it meant, she was going to learn to control it. And then she was going to use it, not for revenge, not yet anyway, but for survival, for growth, for becoming something more than the weak wolf who'd been rejected and cast out. The bond ached in her chest, sharp and insistent. Ronan was out there somewhere, leading his pack, living his life, probably never thinking about her at all. But he would. Eventually. Because Selene was done being forgettable, done being nothing. The power inside her stirred again, responding to her determination. And this time, when it surged, she didn't fight it. She welcomed it. The power surged through her veins like liquid fire, and for the first time, Selene didn't try to force it back down. She let it fill her, stretch her, remake her from the inside out. Her wolf rose to meet it, not the small, docile creature she'd always known, but something larger, fiercer, ancient. The forest around her went silent. Every bird, every insect, every small creature within 100 yards stopped making noise. They felt it, felt her. Then just as suddenly as it had come, the power receded. Not gone. She could feel it coiled in her chest, waiting, but controlled, restrained. Selene opened her eyes. Her hands were glowing faintly, a silver-white light that faded even as she watched. What the hell was that? She spun. Torch stood 20 feet away, hand on the knife at her belt. The security chief's expression was carefully neutral, but her body language screamed threat assessment. "How long have you been there?" Selene asked. "Long enough to see your little light show." Torch didn't move closer. "That's not normal wolf ability. That's not even normal alpha ability. So I'm going to ask you one more time. What the hell was that?" Selene could lie, could deflect, but Torch had already seen too much, and lying would only make things worse. "I don't know," she said honestly. "It started a few weeks ago. The pull, the surges. Tonight's the first time I've tried not fighting it." "Bad idea." "Maybe. But fighting it wasn't working either." Torch studied her for a long moment. "You realize what happens if the council finds out you've got unexplained power, right? They'll see you as a threat, exile you. Or worse." "I know." "Then why risk it? Why not just leave before they notice?" "Because running doesn't solve the problem." Selene's voice was steady, despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Whatever this is, it's part of me now. If I run, it comes with me. And next time I lose control, there might not be someone like you standing there asking questions instead of attacking." "You think I'm not attacking?" "If you were going to attack, you'd have done it already." That got a slight smile from Torch. "Fair point. So what's your plan? Learn to control it? Figure out what you are?" "Both, if I can. And if you can't?" Selene met her eyes. "Then I guess I die. But at least I'll die trying to be something more than what I was." Torch was quiet for a moment, then she sighed. "You got more spine than sense, you know that?" "So I've been told." "All right, here's the deal." Torch moved closer, her hand leaving her knife. "I'm not reporting this to the council. Yet. But you got 1 week to get whatever this is under control. 1 week. If you lose it in public again, if you put settlement wolves at risk, I'll exile you myself. Clear?" "Clear." "Good. Now get back to your shelter before someone else sees you glowing like a damn lantern." Selene didn't need to be told twice. The next morning, she sought out Sage again. The old woman was outside the shelter, scraping a hide with practiced efficiency. "You felt it last night," Selene said without preamble. "Didn't you?" Sage didn't look up. "Everyone with any sensitivity felt it. Most won't know what it was, but some will. I need help. I need to understand what's happening to me. Can't help what I don't understand myself." Sage's hands kept working. "Old blood's just a name, a legend. Most of us don't know what it really means anymore." "But you've heard the stories. Stories won't teach you control." "No, but they might tell me what I'm dealing with." Sage finally looked up, her ancient eyes studying Selene's face. "You really want to know, even if it makes you more of a target than you already are?" "Yes." The old woman set aside her work. "All right, come with me." She led Selene away from the settlement, into the forest where no one would overhear. They walked for nearly an hour before Sage stopped in a small clearing. "The old packs," Sage began, "before territories were divided like they are now, before alphas ruled through strength alone. They had different hierarchies, different powers. Alphas weren't the strongest, they were just the best fighters. But there were others. Wolves who could command without fighting, who could bend pack bonds to their will, who could sense things other wolves couldn't. What were they called? Different names in different regions, seers, binders, wardens." Sage's expression was distant, remembering. "My grandmother called them sovereigns, said they were the real power behind the old packs, the ones who kept everything balanced." "What happened to them?" "Same thing that happens to any power that threatens the status quo. The alphas got scared, started killing them, driving them out. Within a few generations, the bloodlines scattered, went dormant. Most people forgot they ever existed." Selene felt the power stir in her chest at Sage's words, like it recognized the story. "You think that's what I am? One of these sovereigns?" "I think you've got their blood. Whether that makes you one of them?" Sage shrugged. "That's not something I can answer." "How do I control it?" "No idea. Like I said, most of the knowledge died with the bloodlines." Sage started walking back toward the settlement. "But if I were you, I'd figure it out fast. Because once word spreads that there's a wolf with sovereign blood in Greyvale, you'll have bigger problems than the council. What kind of problems? The kind that involve alphas who remember the old stories, who see you as either a weapon to use or a threat to eliminate. The words settled in Selene's gut like stones. She spent the next 3 days experimenting in private, learning to summon the power without it overwhelming her. It was like trying to control a flood with her bare hands, messy, exhausting, and only partially successful. But she was making progress. The surges became less random, the pull less insistent. She could feel the power waiting, could touch it intentionally instead of being ambushed by it. On the 4th day, everything went to hell. Selene was at the market working through inventory with Flint when a commotion erupted at the settlement's western edge. Shouting, the sound of wolves shifting, combat. She ran toward the noise with dozens of others. What she found made her blood run cold. 6 wolves stood at the border, all wearing the marks of organized pack warriors. Behind them, bound and bleeding, were Crag and Vex. "We're looking for a rogue," the lead warrior announced. He was massive, easily 6'6", with scars that told stories of serious violence. "Female. Goes by Ash. Word is she's hiding here." Torch stepped forward, her security team forming up behind her. "Greyvale's neutral territory. We don't hand over residents to outside packs." "This isn't a request." The warrior gestured to Crag and Vex. "These two were very helpful. Told us all about the little rogue who got them exiled, about her unique abilities, about the power she doesn't know how to control." Selene's heart stopped. Crag and Vex had sold her out, probably to save their own skins. "I don't know what they told you," Torch said, her voice level, "but Greyvale doesn't have anyone matching that description." "Really?" The warrior smiled. It wasn't friendly. "Because they were very specific. Small wolf, dark hair, came from Blackthorn Ridge about 6 months ago." The crowd around Selene shifted. She felt eyes turning toward her, recognition dawning. "If you've got a rogue with sovereign blood," the warrior continued, "our alpha wants her. He's prepared to pay well, or..." His smile widened. "We can take her by force and burn this settlement to the ground. Your choice." "Who's your alpha?" Torch asked, though her hand was already moving toward her weapon. "Matthias Cade. Ironwood Pack." The name sent murmurs through the crowd. Ironwood was one of the most brutal packs in the Northern Territories, known for expansion through conquest. He's very interested in meeting this Ash, seeing if the rumors are true. Selene's mind raced. She could run, disappear into the forest before they could stop her, but that would leave Greyvale vulnerable. These warriors would tear the settlement apart looking for her. Or she could surrender. Let them take her to Ironwood. Hope she survived whatever Matthias Cade had planned. Neither option was good. "There's no one here with sovereign blood," Flint spoke up, moving to stand beside Torch. "These two," he gestured at Crag and Vex. "They're liars. Got exiled for theft. Probably made up the whole story to get revenge." "That's so." The warrior looked at Crag. "You making this up?" Craig's face was a mess of bruises, but his eyes found Selene in the crowd. "She's right there. That's her. Ash." The warrior followed his gaze, his eyes locked on Selene. Well, he started forward. "Let's have a look at you." Torch stepped in his path. "You're not touching any Greyvale resident without council approval. Move." "No!" The warrior's hand shot out, grabbing Torch by the throat and lifting her off the ground. She clawed at his grip, gasping for air. "I said move." Selene felt the power surge inside her, felt it respond to Torch's danger, to the threat these warriors represented. It rose like a tidal wave, demanding release. She could let it come, could unleash it and see what happened, or she could surrender, save the settlement, accept whatever fate waited at Ironwood. The choice crystallized in a single moment. Selene stepped forward. "Let her go. I'm the one you want." The warrior's eyes found hers. He dropped Torch, who collapsed gasping. "You're Ash?" "Yes." "You have sovereign blood?" "I have something. I don't know what it is." "Show me." Selene hesitated. Then, knowing it was probably a mistake, but seeing no other choice, she reached for the power. Let it rise. Let it flow through her just enough that her hands began to glow with that silver-white light. The reaction was immediate. Every wolf in the clearing felt it. The pull, the command, the absolute certainty that they were in the presence of something other. The warrior stared at her hands, then at her face. "You're coming with us." "Let me say goodbye to—" "No." He grabbed her arm. "You're coming now." "Wait." Torch was back on her feet, voice hoarse. "She's a Greyvale resident. You can't just take her." "Watch me." The warrior started dragging Selene toward his team. The power surged again, harder this time. Selene felt it pushing against her control, wanting to lash out, to protect her. "Don't fight them!" Sage's voice cut through the chaos. The old woman stood at the edge of the crowd. "You fight. They destroy everything. You go. You live to come back." The words hit like a slap. Selene forced the power down, locked it away. "I'll go," she said. "Just leave Greyvale alone." The warrior nodded. Smart girl. They bound her hands with silver-laced rope that burned against her skin. Silver suppressed wolf abilities, made shifting impossible. It would keep her power dampened, too. As they led her away from the settlement, Selene looked back once. Saw Torch and Flint and Sage watching. Saw Rita standing outside their shared shelter, arms crossed. Saw dozens of wolves she'd lived among for 6 months, all wearing varying expressions of shock and fear. She'd survived Ronan's rejection, survived exile, survived Greyvale's harsh realities. Now she was walking into something worse. The journey to Ironwood territory took 2 days. The warriors didn't speak to her except to give orders. They kept her bound, kept her separated, treated her like dangerous cargo, which, she supposed, she was. On the second night, camped in a forest clearing, Craig approached her. His face was still bruised, but he was smiling. "Bet you're regretting not helping us with the market now," he said. Selene didn't respond. "We told Ironwood all about you, about your little power shows, about how you're some kind of ancient bloodline wolf." He crouched down to her level. "Matthias is going to love you. Probably breed you. Try to create more sovereigns for his army." The casual cruelty in his voice made Selene's stomach turn. "Or maybe he'll just kill you," Craig continued. "Study whatever makes you different. Either way, we got paid. Got our revenge. So thanks for that." One of the warriors kicked him away. "Boss said leave her alone." Craig retreated, but his laughter followed him. Selene closed her eyes and tried to think. The silver rope suppressed her power, but she could still feel it beneath the surface. Still access it, though weakly. She could try to escape, break free during the night, run. But where? Back to Greyvale, which would be the first place they'd look? Deeper into the wilderness? Toward Blackthorn Ridge? The bond pulled at her chest at the thought of Ronan's pack. 6 months since the rejection, and it still hurt. Still ached like an open wound that wouldn't heal. Ronan had called her weak, worthless. Nothing. But she wasn't nothing anymore. She had power, real power, the kind that made trained warriors wary. For just a moment, Selene let herself imagine it, walking back into Blackthorn Ridge, showing Ronan exactly what he'd thrown away, making him see that his rejection hadn't destroyed her, it had freed her. The fantasy was sweet, poisonous, tempting. Then reality crashed back. She was bound with silver rope, being dragged to a brutal alpha who wanted to use her as a weapon or breeding stock. Revenge fantasies didn't help. Survival did. They reached Ironwood territory late afternoon on the 3rd day. The pack compound was built like a fortress. High walls, guard towers, warriors patrolling in organized shifts. This wasn't just a pack. It was a military operation. The lead warrior took her straight to the Alpha's compound, a massive building at the center of the fortress, all stone and iron and defensive architecture. Matthias Cade waited in what looked like a war room. Maps covered the walls. Strategy documents littered a large table. The man himself was in his 40s, grizzled and scarred, with eyes that calculated everything and gave away nothing. "So this is the Sovereign," he said, circling Selene like she was livestock. "Smaller than I expected." "She demonstrated the power," the warrior reported. "Silver glow, command presence, matches the old descriptions." "Did she now?" Matthias grabbed Selene's chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Can you control it?" Selene didn't answer. "Strong, silent type. I respect that." He released her. "Here's how this works. You're going to demonstrate your abilities. Show me what you can do. If you're as powerful as the rumors say, you're valuable. If you're not," he shrugged, then you're just another rogue taking up space. And if I refuse, then I make your life painful until you cooperate, or you die. Either way, I find out what I need to know. The casual threat was worse than Craig's cruelty. This was business. Matthias didn't hate her, didn't care about her at all. She was a resource to exploit or eliminate. Take her to holding, Matthias ordered. We'll start testing tomorrow. They dragged her to a cell beneath the compound. Stone walls, iron door, no windows. The silver rope was replaced with silver chains anchored to the wall. Selene was alone in the dark for hours before someone came. The door opened. A woman entered carrying a tray of food and water. She was maybe 30, with the bearing of a trained warrior but something softer in her eyes. Eat, she said, setting the tray down. You'll need your strength. For what? Whatever experiments he has planned? For surviving them. The woman checked the chains. I'm Kira. I run the holding facility. Am I supposed to thank you? No, you're supposed to eat and rest. Kira headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth. I've seen what Matthias does to wolves he considers threats. You want to live through this, you cooperate. Show him you're useful. Make him think you're controllable. Are you? Kira's smile was bitter. I've been Ironwood for 8 years, so you tell me, am I controllable or just smart enough to survive? She left without waiting for an answer. Selene ate the food because refusing would be stupid, drank the water because dehydration wouldn't help. Then she tested the chains. Silver burned her skin, but she could feel the power beneath it. Suppressed, yes. Weakened, yes, but not gone. If she could access it fully, even for a moment, she might be able to break free. But then what? Fight her way out of a fortress full of trained warriors? Run back into the wilderness with an entire pack hunting her? The odds were terrible, but they weren't zero. Selene closed her eyes and reached for the power. It came reluctantly, fighting against the silver's suppression. But it came. She worked through the night, slowly building her tolerance to the silver, strengthening her connection to the power despite the chains. It was exhausting work, painful work. But by dawn, she could touch the power even while bound. It wasn't much, but it was something. The testing began that morning. Matthias had her brought to a training yard. Other wolves watched from the sidelines, pack warriors, all studying her with calculating eyes. Simple test, Matthias announced. Show me the power. Make me believe the rumors. Selene stood in the center of the yard, chains removed but surrounded by armed warriors. If she tried to run, they'd cut her down in seconds. I need you to remove the silver, she said. Not happening. Then I can't show you anything. Silver suppresses the power. Matthias studied her. You could be lying, making excuses. I could be, but you dragged me here to test me, so test me, or don't. Your choice. A long silence. Then Matthias gestured. Remove the cuffs. The moment the silver left her skin, power flooded back. Selene gasped at the intensity of it. After hours of suppression, feeling it fully was almost overwhelming. Well? Matthias prompted. Selene reached for the power. Let it rise. Let her hands begin to glow with that silver-white light. Every wolf in the yard felt it. The pull, the command, the sense that something ancient and powerful stood among them. Interesting, Matthias said. He didn't look afraid, just intrigued. What else can you do? That was the problem. Selene didn't really know. The power had awakened, yes, but she'd barely scratched the surface of what it could do. I'm still learning, she admitted. Then let's help you learn. Matthias gestured to one of his warriors. Marcus, attack her. The warrior moved before Selene could react. He was fast, trained, ruthless. His fist drove toward her face. The power surged instinctively. Selene's hand shot up, not to block, but to command. Stop! The word came out with weight, with force, with absolute certainty. Marcus froze mid-attack, his body locked in place, fist inches from her face. His eyes widened in shock. I can't move, he said. What did she... I can't move. The other warriors tensed, weapons appeared. The entire yard shifted into combat readiness. Selene released Marcus, who stumbled back, gasping. That, Matthias said slowly, is exactly what I was hoping for. The smile on his face made Selene's blood run cold. Because she'd just shown him she could control other wolves, could command them with nothing but will and power. She'd proven she was useful, which meant he'd never let her go. Over the next week, the testing intensified. Matthias pushed her harder each day, forcing her to use the power in different ways, commanding wolves to move, to stop, to shift or hold human form against their will. Each demonstration drained her, left her exhausted and shaking, but it also taught her control, taught her the limits of what she could do and what she couldn't. She couldn't break the silver chains without help, couldn't command more than 3 or 4 wolves at once without the power fragmenting, couldn't hold a command for more than a few minutes before it dissolved. She was powerful, yes, but not invincible. Matthias documented everything, took notes, experimented with different scenarios. "You're going to help me expand Ironwood territory," he told her on the 8th day. "We'll hit smaller packs first. You'll command their warriors to stand down, make them submit without a fight, clean conquests, minimal casualties. I won't help you conquer other packs. You will, or I'll start killing Greyvale wolves, 1 per day until you cooperate." His expression didn't change. Your choice. The threat was real. Selene knew it in her bones. She was trapped. If she refused, innocent wolves died. If she cooperated, she became a weapon for territorial expansion. There had to be another option. Had to be. That night, Kira brought food again, but this time, she lingered. "You're thinking about escaping," she said quietly. Selene tensed. "What makes you say that?" "Because I would be, if I were you." Kira glanced at the door. "I can help, but you need to know what you're getting into." "Why would you help me?" "Because Matthias is planning something bigger than just territorial expansion. He's been communicating with other alphas, building alliances, and you're the centerpiece of his strategy." Kira's voice dropped even lower. "He's planning to attack Blackthorn Ridge, use you to neutralize their alpha, force a surrender." The words hit like a physical blow. "Ronan. You know him?" "He's my—" Selene stopped. The word mate wouldn't come. "He rejected me 6 months ago. That's why I was in Greyvale." Kira's expression shifted. Understanding, sympathy. "Matthias knows. That's why he's targeting Blackthorn Ridge first. He thinks you'll cooperate because of the rejection, that you'll want revenge." Would she? 6 months ago, the answer would have been an immediate yes. Now? Now she didn't know. "When?" Selene asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. He's gathering forces, planning the assault. Kira met her eyes. "If you're going to run, it has to be soon, before he moves you to the war camp where security's tighter." "And you're offering to help because?" "Because I've seen what Matthias does to the packs he conquers, the wolves he enslaves, the families he tears apart." Kira's voice hardened. "I won't be part of that again, not if I can stop it." It could be a trap, a test of loyalty. But something in Kira's eyes said she was telling the truth. "What's your plan?" Selene asked. "Tomorrow night. There's a shift change at midnight. I can get you out of the cell, get you to the east wall. There's a section that's less guarded, but you'll have to move fast. Once they realize you're gone, they'll hunt you. I can't outrun Ironwood warriors." "No, but you can make it to neutral ground. There's a canyon system 15 miles east, too dangerous for organized pursuit. If you reach that, you've got a chance." 15 miles. Through hostile territory, with trained hunters tracking her. The odds were terrible, but they were better than becoming Matthias's weapon. "Why are you doing this?" Selene asked again. Kira was quiet for a moment. "Because 8 years ago, Matthias conquered my pack, killed my alpha, enslaved anyone who wouldn't submit, and I've been too afraid to fight back, too afraid to do anything but survive." Her hands clenched. "But watching him plan to do the same thing to another pack, using you as a weapon? I can't. Not again." The next night, Selene waited in the darkness of her cell. Every minute felt like an hour. Every sound made her jump. Then the lock clicked. Kira slipped inside, a set of keys in her hand. "Ready?" "As I'll ever be. The silver has to stay on until you're clear of the compound. If you use your power inside the walls, every wolf will sense it. You'll be dead before you reach the gate." Selene nodded. Kira unlocked the chains but left the silver cuffs on her wrists. They moved through the holding facility in silence, past empty cells, past guard stations that were mysteriously vacant. Kira had planned this carefully. They reached a service exit. Kira handed Selene a pack. Food, water, a knife, not much, but it's what I could manage. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The hard part's just starting. Kira opened the door. 15 miles east, the canyon entrance is marked with 3 stacked stones. Don't stop. Don't look back. Just run. Selene stepped into the night. The compound was quiet around her. Most wolves asleep or on patrol elsewhere. She made it 20 feet before the alarm sounded. Someone had discovered the escape. Guards shouted. Wolves howled. The entire fortress erupted into chaos. Run! Kira screamed. Selene ran. She hit the east wall at full speed, found the section Kira had described, and started climbing. The silver cuffs made it harder, burned her skin, but adrenaline pushed her through. She cleared the wall and dropped 15 feet to the ground outside. Pain shot through her ankle, but she kept moving. Behind her, warriors poured out of the compound, shifted into wolf form, started hunting. Selene ran east, into the forest, the pack at her heels. The silver cuffs were a problem. She couldn't shift, couldn't access her power, could only run on human legs while wolves closed the distance behind her. She needed the cuffs off, but stopping to remove them meant getting caught. A wolf burst from the trees ahead, cutting off her escape. One of Matthias's scouts, teeth bared, ready to kill. Selene grabbed the knife from the pack, knowing it wouldn't be enough, knowing she was about to die. Then the bond flared to life. Not the constant ache she'd lived with for 6 months. Something else, something active. Ronan was close, impossibly close, and he was coming fast. The Blackthorn Ridge Alpha exploded from the darkness like a force of nature. 7 feet of pure predator in wolf form, gray fur and silver eyes that promised death. He hit the Ironwood scout with enough force to shatter bones. The other wolf went down hard, throat torn out before it could even yelp. Then Ronan shifted to human form, his eyes finding Selene in the darkness. You, he said. Just one word. But it carried weight, recognition, shock, and something that looked almost like relief. For a moment, neither of them moved. 6 months of separation compressed into a single breath. The bond flared between them, alive and vicious, pulling them together even as everything else screamed to stay apart. Then reality crashed back. Howls echoed through the forest, more Ironwood warriors closing in fast. We need to move, Ronan said, his voice rough. Now. I can't shift, Silver. Selene held up her bound wrists. Ronan's expression darkened. He grabbed the cuffs, his hands smoking where the silver touched his skin, and wrenched them apart with brute strength. The metal screamed and snapped. The moment the silver fell away, power flooded back into Selene's body. Her wolf surged forward, desperate for freedom after days of suppression. Can you run? Ronan asked. Yes. Then run. East. Don't stop. He shifted back to wolf form, massive and lethal, positioning himself between her and the approaching hunters. Selene wanted to argue, to tell him she didn't need his protection, that he'd lost the right to defend her when he'd rejected her in front of his entire pack. But the howls were getting closer. At least a dozen wolves, maybe more. She ran. Her wolf fought for control, wanted to shift and fight beside Ronan despite everything. Selene forced it down. She wasn't a fighter, never had been. The best thing she could do was get clear and let Ronan handle the warriors. Behind her, sounds of combat erupted. Snarls, yelps of pain, the wet sound of teeth finding flesh. Selene pushed harder, the forest blurring around her. The bond pulled at her chest, screaming at her to go back, to help, to protect her mate. Not your mate, she reminded herself savagely. He rejected you. He made that choice. But the bond didn't care about choices or rejection. It only knew connection. And right now, that connection was in danger. She'd made it maybe half a mile when Ronan caught up, his gray fur matted with blood that wasn't his own. He shifted mid-run, keeping pace beside her in human form. How many? She gasped. She killed 3, wounded 5 more. But there's at least 20 coming. We need to reach neutral ground before an arrow sliced through the air, missing Ronan's head by inches. Archers, he snarled. They're not taking chances. More arrows followed. Selene dodged one, felt another graze her shoulder. Pain flared, but she kept running. There, Ronan pointed ahead. The canyon system. We crossed that Ironwood can't follow without violating territorial treaties. Selene saw it, a massive rift in the earth, easily 100 feet across and twice as deep, a natural barrier that marked the edge of Ironwood's claimed territory. But between them and the canyon were at least a dozen Ironwood warriors, forming a blockade. They anticipated the route, Ronan said. We need to break through. I can't fight that many. You don't have to fight them. Ronan's eyes met hers. You just have to stop them. Whatever power you've got, use it. He'd felt it through the bond, sensed the change in her, the thing she'd become. I don't know if I can control... Selene. Her name on his lips after 6 months of silence hit like a physical blow. I know what I did to you. I know I have no right to ask for anything. But right now, I need you to trust that I will keep you alive. And I need you to trust yourself. Whatever you've become, it's enough. The warriors were closing in from behind. The blockade held firm ahead. They had maybe 30 seconds before they were surrounded and overwhelmed. Selene reached for the power. It came eagerly, flooding through her with an intensity that stole her breath. 6 months ago, she'd been weak, barely worth acknowledging. Now she was something else entirely. When I drop them, she said, we run. No hesitation. Understood. Selene focused on the blockade ahead. 12 wolves, all trained warriors, all ready to kill. She could feel their pack bonds, the connections that tied them to Matthias and Ironwood. Strong bonds, loyal bonds. But not as strong as what she was about to do. She pushed the power outward, not as a wave, but as individual threads. 12 commands, each one targeted and absolute. Stop, stand down, let us pass. The effect was immediate and terrifying. All 12 warriors froze mid-stride, their bodies locked in place, eyes going wide with shock and confusion. I can't move. What is she? Alpha, she's controlling... Their protests cut off as Selene tightened the command. She could feel their pack bonds straining against her will, Matthias's influence fighting her control. She pushed harder. The power burned through her, hotter and brighter than anything she'd felt before. The pack bonds shattered like glass. Run! Selene screamed. She and Ronan sprinted through the gap in the blockade. The warriors couldn't even turn their heads to track them, frozen by a power none of them understood. They hit the canyon edge at full speed. The gap was too wide to jump, easily 100 feet across. But there were bridges, old rickety wooden structures that looked like they'd collapse if you looked at them wrong. That one! Ronan pointed to the nearest bridge. Go! Selene didn't hesitate. She ran onto the bridge, felt it sway under her weight, heard wood creaking ominously. Behind them, her control broke. The 12 warriors collapsed, gasping. The pursuing pack burst through the tree line, at least 20 more wolves adding to the chaos. Bring her down! Someone roared. Don't let them cross! Arrows flew. One hit the bridge inches from Selene's foot. Another grazed Ronan's leg, drawing blood. They were halfway across when Matthias himself appeared at the canyon edge. Even in human form, the Ironwood Alpha radiated fury. You think you can escape? He shouted. You think crossing into neutral ground will save you? I'll hunt you to the ends of the earth, Sovereign. You're mine. I'm not anyone's, Selene screamed back. The power surged again, responding to her rage. I'm done being owned. She reached for the bridge supports behind them. Couldn't control wood. That wasn't her power. But she could control the wolves on the other side. Cut the bridge, she commanded 3 of the nearest warriors. Now! They moved like puppets, drawing knives and slicing through the support ropes. What are you doing? Matthias roared. Stop! That's an order! But Selene's command was stronger. The warriors kept cutting. The bridge groaned. Ropes snapped. Selene and Ronan reached the far side just as the structure collapsed behind them. It fell into the canyon with a crash that echoed for miles. Safe. For now. Selene collapsed onto solid ground, her body shaking from power expenditure and adrenaline crash. Ronan dropped beside her, breathing hard. Across the canyon, Matthias stood at the edge, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over, you hear me? I'll find you. I'll take what's mine. She was never yours, Ronan said, his voice carrying across the gap. And if you come for her again, Ironwood will burn. It was a declaration of protection, of possession, the kind of claim an alpha made over their mate. Except Selene wasn't his mate, not anymore. He'd made sure of that 6 months ago. Matthias smiled, cold and knowing. Interesting. The alpha who rejected her now defends her. I wonder, does she know why you're really here, Varric? Does she know what you're after? Ronan's expression didn't change, but Selene felt something shift in the bond. Tension. Guilt. What's he talking about? She asked. Nothing. He's playing games. Am I? Matthias's smile widened. Ask him, Sovereign. Ask your rejected mate why he was in Ironwood territory, why he came for you at all. I promise the answer is fascinating. Selene looked at Ronan. Tell me. Not here, not now. We need to move before. Tell me now. The command slipped into her voice without conscious thought. The power made it absolute. Ronan's jaw clenched. He fought the compulsion, but she could feel his will bending. I felt you, he said finally, the words forced out. Through the bond. 3 days ago. Terror, pain, rage. I felt all of it. That doesn't explain why you came. Because the bond wouldn't let me ignore it. The admission came out like it was being torn from him. 6 months of trying to suppress it. 6 months of pretending you didn't exist. And then I felt you dying, and I couldn't. He stopped, visibly struggling. I had to know. Had to confirm you were still alive, that's all. Across the canyon, Matthias laughed. How romantic. He still cares even after throwing you away. Though I have to wonder, if the bond is still that strong, was the rejection ever real? The question hung in the air like poison. Selene released Ronan from the compulsion. We need to go. She stood on shaking legs and started walking east, away from the canyon, away from Matthias's knowing smile. Away from the conversation that would tear open wounds she wasn't ready to face. Ronan followed silently. They walked for hours, putting distance between themselves and Ironwood territory. The forest around them was dense, wild, unclaimed by any pack. Dangerous ground, but safer than what lay behind. Finally, when Selene's legs were threatening to give out entirely, Ronan called a halt. There. He pointed to a rocky outcropping that would provide shelter. We rest here. Just a few hours. Selene wanted to argue, wanted to keep moving, but her body was done. The power expenditure had drained her completely. She collapsed against the rocks, every muscle screaming. Ronan built a small fire, risky, but necessary. The temperature was dropping fast and Selene was shivering despite herself. He handed her the pack Kira had given her. Eat. You need to recover. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The silence between them was thick with unspoken words. Finally, Ronan broke it. You've changed. You rejected me and threw me out of my home. Yes, I've changed. That's not what I meant. He stared into the fire. Your power. What you did back there, controlling 12 warriors at once, breaking their pack bonds, that's not normal. That's not even normal for sovereign bloodlines. How would you know what's normal for sovereigns? You said yourself most people think they're extinct. Most people do. But my grandfather kept records. Old histories. Ronan's voice was careful. He believed the sovereigns were real. That they'd been systematically eliminated because they threatened alpha authority. And you just happened to remember this after rejecting your sovereign-blooded mate? I didn't know you had sovereign blood when I rejected you. The words came out sharp. You were weak, small, showed no signs of any power. So that makes it better? You rejected me for being weak and now you're here because I'm powerful? I'm here because the bond wouldn't let me abandon you to Ironwood. Ronan's control cracked. I felt you being tortured, felt you terrified and in pain, and every instinct I have screamed to come for you, to protect you, to... He stopped, jaw clenched. To what? To claim you, properly, the way I should have 6 months ago. The confession hung in the air between them. Selene felt the bond flare in response, felt her wolf rising to meet his despite her conscious resistance. You can't, she said quietly. You rejected me, publicly, in front of your entire pack. That can't be undone. It can, if both parties agree to accept the bond again. I don't agree. The words came out harder than she intended. You made your choice, Ronan. You chose strength and power and bloodlines over the mate bond. You chose Mira. Mira means nothing to me. She meant enough 6 months ago, enough to parade in front of everyone, enough to kiss at the claiming ceremony while I stood there humiliated. Ronan flinched. I was making a point. showing the pack that I was worthless, that I could be discarded and replaced, that sacred bonds meant less than your pride. Selene's voice stayed level despite the anger burning in her chest. You did that, Ronan. You made those choices, and now you want to undo them because it turns out I'm not worthless after all? Because I have power you can use? That's not why. Then why? Why come for me? Why risk Ironwood's fury? Why care at all about the weak, unworthy mate you threw away? Because I was wrong! The words exploded out of him. About everything. About strength and power and what makes a worthy mate. About you. I was wrong, and I've been paying for it every day since that ceremony. Good, Selene said flatly. I hope you pay for it the rest of your life. Ronan recoiled like she'd struck him. You really hate me that much? I don't hate you at all. That's the problem. She met his eyes across the fire. The bond won't let me hate you. It pulls at me constantly, wanting connection, wanting completion. But what I want, what I choose, is to never give you that power over me again. You rejected me once. You don't get a second chance. Selene, we're done talking. You saved me from Ironwood. I'm grateful. But that doesn't change what you did. Doesn't erase the humiliation or the pain or the 6 months I spent learning to survive without you. She turned her back to him. Get some rest. We move again at dawn. Silence fell. Selene closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. The bond ached, wanting her to turn around, to accept what Ronan was offering, to let the mate connection win. She didn't, because accepting him now would mean that his rejection had been right, that she'd only become worthy through gaining power. That weakness deserved abandonment, but strength deserved love, and she refused to validate that twisted logic, even if refusing meant living with the bond's constant pain for the rest of her life. Dawn came cold and gray. They moved east again, Ronan leading, Selene following at a careful distance. The bond pulled constantly, wanting them closer, but she ignored it. Around midday, they reached a river. Ronan called a halt. We need to cross here. On the other side is free territory, unclaimed land between major pack regions. We can rest there. Figure out next steps. Next steps for what? For keeping you safe. Matthias won't give up. He'll hunt you. Use every resource at his disposal to find you and bring you back. Ronan's expression was grim, and he's not the only one who'll want you. Once word spreads that there's a sovereign with real power, every alpha in the territory will come looking, some to recruit you, others to eliminate you. So what do you suggest? I hide forever? Live in the wilderness like some feral rogue? No, you come back to Blackthorn Ridge, under my protection. Selene laughed, sharp and bitter. You're joking. I'm not. Blackthorn Ridge is defensible. We have warriors, resources, alliances. I can keep you safe there. At what cost? Becoming your prisoner instead of Matthias's? Trading one cage for another? It wouldn't be a cage. You'd be free to come and go, to live your life. Ronan hesitated. I'd be there. To protect you. To help you learn to control your power. To what? Play at being mates again? Pretend the last 6 months didn't happen? To try to fix what I broke. His voice was quiet but steady. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I'm asking anyway. Come back. Let me prove that I can be better than I was. It was tempting. The bond screamed at her to say yes, to accept protection and safety, and the chance to fix what had been shattered. But Selene had learned hard lessons in Greyvale and Ironwood, had learned that accepting protection always came with strings, that dependence was just another form of weakness. No, she said, I'm not coming to Blackthorn Ridge. Then where will you go? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. She met his eyes. I survived your rejection, survived exile in Greyvale and Ironwood. I'll survive whatever comes next, too. You don't have to do this alone. Yes, I do. Because the moment I accept your help, I accept your authority, your control. And I'm done being controlled by anyone. Ronan's expression shifted into something like pain. I never wanted to control you. Maybe not consciously, but that's what alpha authority is. That's what the mate bond would be with you. You'd always have power over me, always be able to make decisions about my life, my future, my choices. Selene shook her head. I won't give that up. Not again. Even if it means living in constant danger? Especially then, because at least the danger is honest. At least I know where I stand. They crossed the river in tense silence. On the far side, the forest opened up into unclaimed territory, wild lands where only rogues and outcasts survived. Ronan stopped at the tree line. "This is where I leave you, then." Selene nodded, not trusting her voice. "If you change your mind, if you need anything, Blackthorn Ridge will always have a place for you." He hesitated, then added quietly, "I'll always have a place for you." "Don't," Selene said. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I kept one promise." Ronan's eyes met hers. "I came when you needed me. When the bond called. I came. And I'm grateful, truly. But one rescue doesn't erase 6 months of abandonment. It doesn't fix what you broke." "I know." He started to turn away, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I see you now. The strength I was too blind to recognize before. The power I dismissed as worthless. The person you've become despite everything I did to destroy you." His voice roughened. "You were never weak, Selene. I was just too weak to see your strength." The apology, real and raw and 6 months too late, hit harder than any of his earlier words. Selene wanted to forgive him, wanted to accept the apology and let the bond pull them back together, wanted to believe that people could change, that mistakes could be fixed, that rejection could be transformed into reunion. But wanting wasn't enough. "Goodbye, Ronan," she said. He flinched like she'd struck him. Then, without another word, he shifted to wolf form and disappeared into the forest, heading west toward Blackthorn Ridge. Selene watched him go, feeling the bond stretch thin and painful between them. Every step he took hurt. Every mile of distance was a fresh wound. But she didn't call him back, because she'd learned something in the last 6 months. Something more valuable than any mate bond or alpha protection. She'd learned to survive alone, and that was a power no one could take from her. Selene spent 2 days in the unclaimed territory, resting and regaining her strength. The power had taken a lot out of her, and she needed time to recover before making any major decisions. On the 3rd day, she felt the pull. Not the mate bond. That was a constant ache she'd learned to live with. This was something else. Something new. Other sovereigns. She didn't know how she knew, just that somewhere out there, others like her existed. Their presence called to her power, recognizing like calling to like. They were far away, scattered, but they were there, and suddenly, Selene knew what she needed to do. She couldn't go back to Blackthorn Ridge and hide under Ronan's protection. Couldn't return to Greyvale and pretend to be normal. Couldn't keep running from alphas who wanted to use her power for their own purposes. She needed to find the other sovereigns, learn what she truly was, understand the full extent of her abilities, and then, only then, would she decide what to do with the power she'd inherited. Matthias wanted to use her as a weapon. Ronan wanted to protect her like a fragile thing. The entire wolf world seemed to think sovereigns were either tools or threats. Maybe it was time to prove them all wrong. Maybe it was time for sovereigns to stop hiding, to stop letting alphas define what power meant, and who deserved to wield it. The idea was dangerous, ambitious, probably impossible, but 6 months ago, surviving exile had seemed impossible too. Selene gathered her meager supplies and started walking, not west toward Blackthorn Ridge, not back toward Greyvale, but north, toward the territories where she'd felt the pull of other sovereign bloodlines. She'd find them, learn from them, build something new. And if Matthias came hunting, if other alphas tried to capture or kill her, she'd show them exactly what a sovereign could do when she stopped being afraid of her own power. The journey north took 3 weeks. Selene traveled carefully, avoiding packed territories, staying to unclaimed lands where possible. The bond ached constantly, Ronan's presence a persistent ghost at the edge of her awareness. But she ignored it. She had bigger things to focus on. The first sovereign she found was in a small rogue settlement east of the northern mountains. An old wolf named Elder who'd spent 40 years hiding his abilities, pretending to be nothing more than a skilled mediator. "You're young," he said when Selene demonstrated her power, "and strong. Stronger than any sovereign I've seen in decades." "There are others?" Selene asked. "A few, scattered, hiding, mostly. The purges may have been generations ago, but the fear remains." Elder studied her with ancient eyes. "What are you planning, young one?" "I don't know yet, But I'm tired of hiding, tired of being hunted and used and treated like either a weapon or a victim. Elder smiled, showing gaps where teeth used to be. Then perhaps it's time for a new story, one where sovereigns stop apologizing for existing. He told her about the others. A woman named Lyra in the Western Territories who could sense pack bonds from miles away. A young male called Finn who discovered his abilities after his alpha tried to have him killed. A dozen more, all hiding, all afraid. Find them, Elder said. Bring them together. Show them they don't have to hide anymore. It took 6 months. 6 months of careful travel, of finding sovereigns who'd spent lifetimes concealing what they were. 6 months of convincing them that gathering was possible, that safety could exist in numbers rather than isolation. Not all of them came. Some were too afraid, others too comfortable in their hiding. But 7 did. 7 sovereigns who met in a valley between territories, all looking at each other with wonder and recognition. "We're really doing this?" Lyra asked. She was in her 30s, hard-faced and cautious. Coming out of hiding? The Alphas will see this as a threat. "Let them," Selene said. "We've been letting Alphas dictate our existence for too long. Time to change that." "And what exactly are we changing it to?" Finn asked. He was younger than Selene, maybe 19, with power he could barely control. A sanctuary. The idea had been forming for months, crystallizing as she'd traveled and met others like her. A place where sovereigns can live without fear, where we can learn from each other, control our abilities, and prove we're not threats, we're assets. "The Alphas will never accept that," another sovereign said, an older woman named Vera. "Then we make them accept it." Selene met each of their eyes in turn. "We offer services, mediation between packs, treaty negotiations, dispute resolution, things Alphas need but struggle with. We make ourselves valuable, necessary. And we do it together, so no single Alpha can capture or control any of us." It was ambitious, possibly insane, but they were desperate enough to try. They found a location, an abandoned mining settlement in neutral territory, defensible, central, unclaimed by any pack. They called it Haven. Word spread slowly at first. Packs heard rumors of sovereigns gathering, offering their services. Some dismissed it as fantasy. Others investigated cautiously. The first real test came 4 months after Haven was established. 2 packs, Ironwood and a smaller territory called Redstone, were on the brink of war over a disputed border. Matthias himself had led raids, killed Redstone wolves, seemed determined to absorb the smaller pack by force. Redstone's alpha, a pragmatic woman named Kara, reached out to Haven. "Can you mediate?" she asked Selene. "Or will this just get us all killed?" "We can try," Selene said, "but I need your word. Whatever we negotiate, you'll honor it." "You have it." Getting Matthias to the table was harder. He sent a message back. "The sovereign belongs to me. Tell her to come collect her fate." Selene went anyway, but not alone. She brought Lyra, Finn, and Elder. 4 sovereigns walking into Ironwood territory under a truce flag. Matthias received them in his war room, the same place he'd tested Selene months ago. "You have courage, I'll give you that," he said, coming back here. "I'm not here for you, I'm here for the border dispute. Redstone has asked Haven to mediate." "Haven," Matthias smiled. "That's what you're calling your little collection of runaways? Charming." "The border dispute," Selene repeated. "Will you negotiate, or do you want a war that'll cost you hundreds of warriors?" "I want you back in chains where you belong." Elder stepped forward. His power was different from Selene's. Less control, more sensing. He could read pack bonds, feel the health and stability of a territory. "Your pack is fracturing," Elder said quietly. "Your warriors are exhausted. Your resources stretch thin. You've conquered 3 territories in 2 years, and you can't hold them all. Another war will break you." Matthias's expression darkened. "You're guessing." "I'm reading what's already there. You know I'm right." The Ironwood Alpha was silent for a long moment. Then, "What are you offering?" "A solution that doesn't require war," Selene said. "A neutral arbitration of the border dispute. We find a fair division. Both packs honor it. No more bloodshed." "And what do you get out of this?" "Payment, resources, recognition that Haven is neutral territory and that sovereigns under its protection can't be hunted or captured." You're asking for sovereignty. Matthias's smile was sharp. For your little group of freaks to be recognized as an independent entity. Yes. That's ambitious. Also insane. No alpha will agree to that. Kara already has. And if we successfully mediate this dispute, others will follow. Selene met his eyes. You can fight it. You can try to destroy us. Or you can be the first alpha to officially work with Haven, to show strength through wisdom instead of conquest. It was a gamble, appealing to Matthias's ego, suggesting that cooperation was actually a show of power rather than weakness. He considered for a long time. Then, fine, mediate the border. If you succeed, Ironwood will recognize Haven as neutral territory. If you fail, you come back here and submit to whatever testing I deem necessary. No, Selene said. If we fail, we leave, and you never contact Haven again. Those are the terms. You don't dictate terms to me. I just did. Another long silence. Then Matthias laughed. You really have changed. All right, mediate the border. Succeed or fail on your own merits. But know this, I'll be watching. And the moment Haven becomes a threat instead of a resource, I'll burn it to the ground. Understood. The mediation took 2 weeks. Selene and the other sovereigns worked with both packs, reading bonds, sensing tensions, finding compromises that honored both territories' needs. In the end, they redrew the border in a way that gave Ironwood slightly more land, but gave Redstone control over valuable hunting grounds. Neither pack got everything they wanted. Both got enough to feel satisfied. The treaty was signed, the war was averted, and Haven gained its first official recognition. Word spread after that. Other packs started reaching out, smaller conflicts, internal disputes, succession questions, things alphas struggled with that sovereigns could help resolve. Haven grew. More sovereigns came out of hiding, joined the sanctuary. 15, then 20, then 30. They weren't a pack, weren't a territory in the traditional sense, but they were something. A new kind of power structure in a world that had only known alpha dominance for generations. And Selene, the weak wolf who'd been rejected and cast out, found herself leading it. Not because she was the strongest, not because she had the most power, but because she'd been willing to risk everything to prove sovereigns deserved to exist without fear. 10 months after leaving Ronan at the river, Selene stood in Haven's central building and looked at the community they'd built. Sovereigns training together, learning to control their abilities, others mediating disputes via communication crystals, still others researching old histories, trying to recover lost knowledge. We did it, Lyra said, coming to stand beside her. We actually built something that's lasting. We're not done yet, Selene replied. There are still alphas who see us as threats, still sovereigns in hiding, still. She stopped. The bond had flared suddenly, sharp and urgent. Ronan was close. Very close. What's wrong? Lyra asked. Nothing, just I need to check something. Selene walked outside, followed the bond's pull to Haven's eastern edge. And there he was. Ronan Varric stood at the boundary still in human form, looking at the sanctuary like he couldn't quite believe it existed. Hello, Selene, he said quietly. Her heart clenched. 10 months, and he still had this effect on her. What are you doing here? I heard about Haven, about what you've built. His eyes found hers. I had to see it for myself. And? It's remarkable. You're remarkable. He took a careful step forward. I was wrong. About everything. About strength and worth and what makes someone valuable. You've proven that more thoroughly than I ever could have imagined. Is that why you're here? To congratulate me? No. I'm here because Blackthorn Ridge has a dispute with one of our neighboring packs. A serious one, and He hesitated. I want to request Haven's mediation services. Officially. Selene stared at him. Of all the reasons he might have come, this wasn't one she'd expected. You want to hire us? Yes. Whatever your standard rate is, I'll pay it. I want this done right, and I trust you, trust Haven, to find a fair solution. It was an olive branch, an acknowledgement that she'd built something real, something valuable. Something he needed. The irony wasn't lost on Selene. The alpha who'd rejected her for weakness now needed her strength. We'll consider your request, she said formally. Submit the details to our intake coordinator. We'll review and respond within 3 days. Selene, that's our process, Alpha Varric. for all packs, no exceptions. He flinched at the formality, the distance, but he nodded. Understood. I'll submit the request. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, of what you've accomplished, and I'm sorry I wasn't there to see you become this. You were there, Selene said quietly. Your rejection was the beginning. Without it, I never would have left Blackthorn Ridge, never would have found my power, never would have built Haven. So I should thank myself for destroying you? You didn't destroy me, Ronan. You just forced me to rebuild differently, stronger, on my own terms. She walked back into Haven, leaving the Alpha of Blackthorn Ridge standing at the boundary. The Bond ached, wanting her to go back, to accept what he was offering. But for the first time in 10 months, the ache felt manageable. Because Selene finally understood something fundamental. She didn't need Ronan's validation or acceptance or love. She'd found something better. She'd found herself. The words echoed in Selene's mind as she walked back into Haven's main hall. Around her, sovereigns worked, mediating disputes via communication crystals, training younger members in power control, researching territorial law, a community she'd built from nothing. That was him, wasn't it? Lyra appeared at her elbow. The Alpha who rejected you. Yes. He looked broken. He looked like someone who finally understands what he lost. Selene sat down at her desk, pulling up the intake forms. Doesn't change anything, doesn't it? Lyra's expression was knowing. The bond's still there. I can feel it radiating off you. The bond will always be there. That's the curse of rejected mates. You get all the pain, none of the connection. Selene forced her attention to the paperwork. But I've learned to live with pain, learned it can make you sharper instead of weaker. Over the next 3 days, Ronan's formal request came through proper channels. A border dispute with Crescent Valley Pack over hunting rights and water access. Both sides claiming historical precedent, both sides ready to fight. Haven's council reviewed the case. 7 sovereigns, including Selene, who'd become the de facto leader not through power, but through the respect she'd earned. It's legitimate, Elder said, studying the documentation. Both packs have reasonable claims. This is exactly the kind of dispute we're equipped to handle. It's also a test, Finn pointed out. He'd grown more confident in the past months, his control over his abilities strengthening. Everyone's watching to see if Haven can handle a case involving its founder's former pack. Can you, Vera asked Selene directly, mediate fairly when one party rejected and humiliated you? Selene considered. The easy answer was yes. She was professional, capable of separating personal feelings from her work. But the council deserved honesty. I don't know, she admitted. Part of me wants to punish him, make him suffer the way he made me suffer. That's not fair or just, but it's human. Then perhaps you should recuse yourself, Lyra suggested gently. No. Selene's voice firmed, because running from difficult situations is what the old me would have done. The weak me. I need to prove, to myself more than anyone, that I can face Ronan and Blackthorn Ridge without falling apart, that I'm stronger than my pain. The council voted, 4 in favor of taking the case, 3 abstaining, no one voted against. Then it's settled, Elder said. We mediate. But Selene, if at any point you feel compromised, you step back. Agreed? Agreed. They traveled to neutral ground between Blackthorn Ridge and Crescent Valley, an old meeting house that had served as a treaty location for generations. Selene brought Lyra and Elder as co-mediators, backup and balance. Ronan arrived with Devon Cole, the lieutenant who'd helped Selene escape Blackthorn Ridge's hunters over a year ago. Marcus Thorne was there too, looking uncomfortable. Crescent Valley's delegation included their Alpha, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah, and her Beta, a massive male called Garrett. Thank you for coming, Selene opened formally. Haven appreciates both packs' willingness to pursue mediation over conflict. Our goal is to find a fair solution that honors both territory's needs and historical claims. Just so we're clear, Sarah said, her eyes on Ronan, we're here because Blackthorn Ridge has been aggressive about this border for months. Patrols crossing into our land, challenges to our hunters. If this mediation fails, we go to war. Understood, Selene said. Alpha Varric? Ronan's eyes met hers across the table. Blackthorn Ridge seeks only what's historically ours. The hunting grounds in question were part of our territory before the Great Plague forced us to contract our borders. We're reclaiming what belongs to us. You abandoned those lands, Sarah shot back. For 40 years they've been unclaimed. We moved in, established hunting rights. Squatters don't gain ownership through occupation, Ronan interrupted. That's exactly how territorial law works, Sarah snapped. Enough! Selene's voice cut through the building argument. We're not here to fight. We're here to find solutions. So let's start with facts, not accusations. Over the next week, they worked through historical records, territorial maps, witness testimonies from older wolves who remembered the plague years. Selene coordinated the investigation. Lyra read pack bonds to sense where true grievances lay versus political posturing, and Elder provided historical context. The work was exhausting, and it was made harder by Ronan's constant presence. He didn't push, didn't try to corner her or force private conversations, but he was always there, watching her work, seeing her command respect from both delegations, witnessing what she'd become. On the 5th day, Sarah requested a private meeting with the Haven mediators. I'll be direct, she said once they were alone. Blackthorn Ridge has a legitimate historical claim. I can see that now. But if I concede those hunting grounds, my pack loses a major food source. We'll struggle through winter. What are you proposing? Selene asked. Shared access. Blackthorn Ridge gets acknowledgement of historical ownership. Crescent Valley gets continued hunting rights. We split the territory seasonally. They hunt fall and winter. We hunt spring and summer. It was a reasonable compromise. Maybe the best solution available. We'll present it to Alpha Varric, Selene said. Ronan's response was immediate and negative. No, those are Blackthorn Ridge lands. We don't share what's ours. You'd rather go to war? Elder asked quietly. Lose warriors over hunting grounds you haven't used in 40 years? It's the principle. We don't show weakness by compromising on what's rightfully ours. There it was. The same logic that had driven Ronan to reject Selene. Strength over everything else. Power over pragmatism. Pride over peace. With respect, Alpha Varric, Selene said, her voice carefully neutral. This isn't about weakness. It's about wisdom. You get recognition of historical rights. Crescent Valley gets seasonal access. Both packs avoid a war that would cost lives and resources. That's not compromise, it's strategy. Or it's Haven overstepping, Ronan said, his eyes challenging her, pushing for solutions that benefit everyone except Blackthorn Ridge. We're pushing for solutions that prevent bloodshed, Lyra interjected. That's literally our mandate. Your mandate is to mediate fairly, not to force your values on packs who see strength as survival. Strength is survival, Selene said quietly. But so is adaptation. So is knowing when to fight and when to negotiate. The strongest wolf isn't always the one who wins every battle. It's the one who picks which battles matter. And you think this battle doesn't matter? I think this battle costs more than it gains. But ultimately, it's your choice. Accept the compromise or reject it and prepare for war. Haven will respect either decision. The room went silent. Ronan stared at her, and Selene could feel the bond pulling, could sense his wolf recognizing hers, wanting connection despite everything between them. I need time to consider, he said finally. You have until tomorrow morning, Selene replied. Then we present our findings and recommendations to both packs. That night, Selene couldn't sleep. She walked the grounds around the meeting house, trying to quiet the turmoil in her chest. The bond ached worse than usual, probably because of the extended proximity to Ronan. You're avoiding me. She turned. Ronan stood in the shadows, still in human form, his expression unreadable. I'm doing my job, Selene said. That requires professional distance. Is that all this is? Professional distance? He stepped closer. Or are you afraid that if we actually talk, really talk, you might feel something you don't want to feel? Don't. Don't what? Don't acknowledge that the bond is still there? That it's been there every day for the past year, pulling at both of us? Ronan's voice roughened. I felt you in Ironwood, felt your terror and pain from hundreds of miles away. You think I could feel that if the bond was truly broken? The bond isn't the relationship, Selene said. Just because we're connected doesn't mean we're compatible. Doesn't mean we're good for each other. I know I wasn't good for you. I know I broke something when I rejected you. Ronan's hands clenched, but I'm trying to fix it, trying to prove I've changed. By refusing a reasonable compromise over hunting grounds? By clinging to pride and principle over practical solutions? Selene shook her head. You haven't changed, Ronan. You're still the same alpha who values strength over everything else. That's not fair, isn't it? You came to Haven because you needed our services. But the moment we suggest a solution that requires you to share or compromise, you balk. Because sharing feels like weakness to you, like losing. It is losing. Crescent Valley would get to use lands that belong to Blackthorn Ridge. They'd get seasonal access to lands you haven't used in 4 decades, Selene interrupted. Lands you only want now because someone else has them. That's not strength. That's ego. Ronan recoiled like she'd slapped him. You think this is about ego? I think you've built your entire identity on being the strongest, the most uncompromising, the alpha who never bends. And that identity cost you our mate bond, cost you me. Now it's going to cost you a war you don't need to fight. And what would you have me do? Just give Crescent Valley whatever they want? Show weakness to every pack watching this mediation? I'd have you show wisdom, Selene said softly. I'd have you demonstrate that Blackthorn Ridge is strong enough to negotiate, confident enough to share, secure enough that you don't need to prove your power by fighting over every scrap of territory. That's easy for you to say. You built Haven on cooperation. That's not how pack territory works. Then maybe it should be. Selene's voice strengthened. Maybe the old ways, the ones that say alphas have to dominate, never compromise, always fight. Maybe those ways are exactly why we have so many wars, so much bloodshed, so many broken packs and shattered lives. You want to change centuries of tradition? I want to prove there's a better way. That power doesn't have to mean conquest, that strength can look like cooperation instead of control. She met his eyes. But I can't force you to see that. You have to choose it for yourself. Ronan was quiet for a long moment. Then, if I accept the compromise, if I show this wisdom you're talking about, will you give me a chance? To prove I've changed. And there it was. The real negotiation. The personal cost behind the political decision. Selene felt the bond pull, felt her wolf yearning toward his despite everything. It would be so easy to say yes, to let him back in, to believe that rejection could be undone and broken things could be repaired, but she'd learned hard lessons about trading her dignity for acceptance. No, she said quietly, because if you only change because I ask you to, it's not real change. It's just another form of trying to win me back. And I won't be a prize you claim or a goal you achieve. Then what do you want from me? Nothing. I want you to make the right decision because it's right, not because it might earn my forgiveness, not because you're trying to prove something to me, but because you genuinely believe it's the best choice for your pack. Selene's voice gentled slightly. When you can do that, when you can choose wisdom over ego without any expectation of reward, then maybe we can talk about second chances. She walked away, leaving Ronan standing alone in the darkness. The next morning, both packs assembled for Haven's recommendations. Selene stood before them, flanked by Lyra and Elder, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. After extensive review of historical records, territorial law, and both packs' claims, she began, Haven proposes the following solution. Blackthorn Ridge's historical ownership of the disputed hunting grounds is formally recognized. However, Crescent Valley is granted seasonal hunting rights, spring and summer access in exchange for acknowledging Blackthorn Ridge's primary claim. Murmurs rippled through both delegations. Sarah looked satisfied. Ronan's expression was unreadable. Additionally, Selene continued, we recommend a formal alliance between both packs. Shared security on the border, coordinated hunting to prevent overharvesting, regular council meetings to address future disputes before they escalate. You're asking us to ally with wolves who've been challenging our territory for months, Sarah said, but her tone was more curious than hostile. I'm asking you to build something stronger than individual territories, a regional coalition that benefits everyone. Selene's voice carried through the hall. The frontier is changing. Larger threats are emerging. Rogues, human expansion, alphas like Matthias Cade who conquer through force. Isolated packs won't survive those threats, but allied packs, cooperative territories, those have a chance. This is Haven's vision, then? Ronan asked. Regional coalitions instead of individual pack sovereignty? This is pragmatic survival, Selene corrected. You can cling to old traditions and fight each other over scraps, or you can adapt, cooperate, and build something sustainable. Your choice. The room fell silent. Everyone waited to see what Ronan would do. The Alpha of Blackthorn Ridge stood slowly. Selene felt the bond flare, felt his conflict and uncertainty through the connection they couldn't break. Blackthorn Ridge accepts Haven's recommendation, Ronan said finally. We acknowledge the compromise. We'll pursue alliance with Crescent Valley. Shock rippled through the assembly. Even Devon and Marcus looked surprised. They'd clearly expected their Alpha to reject the proposal. Sarah recovered first. Crescent Valley accepts as well. We'll honor seasonal access and work toward formal alliance. And just like that, it was done. A war averted, a new model established. Over the next weeks, Haven's reputation exploded. Word spread that they'd successfully mediated between Blackthorn Ridge and Crescent Valley, two packs on the brink of war now working toward alliance. Other territories reached out, larger disputes, more complex situations. Haven grew again, 50 sovereigns now, then 70, then 100. They weren't just mediators anymore. They were becoming a power structure in their own right, a neutral force that packs respected not because of strength or territory, but because of the value they provided. 3 months after the Blackthorn Ridge mediation, representatives from 12 packs gathered at Haven for the first regional summit, an unprecedented meeting to discuss cooperation, shared resources, and collective security. Selene stood before them, 12 alphas, all more powerful individually than she was, all capable of crushing her in direct combat. But none of them tried, because they'd learned what she'd spent a year proving. Power wasn't just physical strength. It was influence, necessity, the ability to provide something others needed. Thank you for coming, Selene addressed the assembly. Haven proposes a formal regional council, 12 packs, equal representation, working together to address shared challenges, rogue threats, resource management, territorial disputes, things we currently handle individually at great cost. You're proposing we give up sovereignty, one alpha challenged, an older male from the Western Territories. I'm proposing we pool resources while maintaining individual pack authority, Selene corrected. Think of it as an alliance, not a merger. Each pack keeps its territory, its leadership, its identity. But when regional threats arise, we respond together. When disputes emerge, we mediate before fighting. When opportunities appear, we collaborate instead of competing. And Haven gets what out of this? Asked Sarah. Crescent Valley's Alpha had become an unexpected ally, her alliance with Blackthorn Ridge proving surprisingly successful. Recognition as permanent neutral ground, protection for all sovereigns within our borders, a seat on the regional council with voting rights equal to any pack. Selene met each alpha's eyes. We're not asking for dominance, just acknowledgement that we exist and have value. That's more than any rogue settlement has ever achieved, Matthias Cade said from the back of the room. Selene's blood went cold. She hadn't known Ironwood was sending a representative, hadn't expected to see the alpha who'd tried to enslave her. Alpha Cade, she said evenly. I wasn't aware Ironwood was interested in regional cooperation. I'm interested in understanding what game you're playing. Matthias smiled, sharp and dangerous. A year ago, you were my prisoner. Now you're proposing to sit as an equal among alphas. That's quite a rise. I'm not proposing to sit as an equal among alphas, Selene corrected. I'm proposing that Haven, as a neutral territory representing sovereign interests, has earned a place in regional governance. There's a difference. Is there? Because it looks like you're building power, gathering sovereigns, establishing influence. All the things my grandfather used to warn about before the purges. The room went deadly quiet. Matthias had just invoked the sovereign purges, the systematic elimination of powerful bloodlines that most packs didn't talk about publicly. Your grandfather, Selene said carefully, participated in genocide. He helped destroy entire family lines because they threatened alpha authority. Is that really the legacy you want to invoke? I'm invoking reality. Sovereigns were eliminated because they became too powerful, too influential. They threatened the natural order. The natural order, Ronan spoke up from his seat, has given us centuries of territorial wars, pack conflicts, and unstable regions. Maybe it's time for a new order. Selene's eyes found his across the room. He was defending her, publicly, in front of 11 other alphas. Easy for you to say, Matthias shot back. Your rejected mate runs Haven. You've got personal interest in protecting her. I've got practical interest in regional stability, Ronan corrected coldly. Haven mediated my dispute with Crescent Valley, saved both our packs significant resources and lives. That's value, regardless of personal connections, or its weakness disguised as strategy. Enough. Elder stood, his ancient presence commanding attention despite his age. This council was called to discuss cooperation, not to rehash old prejudices. Alphacade, if you're here to participate constructively, speak. If you're here to threaten, leave. Matthias stared at the old sovereign. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Fair enough. I'll participate constructively. Here's my construction. I'll support regional cooperation on one condition. Haven proves it can handle a real crisis. Not a border dispute or hunting rights, something that threatens multiple packs, something that requires actual power, not just mediation skills. What kind of crisis? Selene asked warily. There's a rogue pack in the northern mountains, 40, maybe 50 wolves, all exiled from various territories. They've been raiding settlements, killing travelers, building towards something bigger. Matthias leaned forward. Multiple packs have tried to eliminate them. All failed. The rogues are too organized, too entrenched. If Haven can handle them, eliminate the threat without starting a multi-pack war, then I'll support your regional council. You'll have my vote. It was a trap. Selene knew it immediately. The northern rogues were dangerous, yes, but they were also a problem no single pack had solved. Matthias was gambling that Haven would fail, would be exposed as mediators who couldn't handle real violence, or Haven would succeed and prove they were exactly the kind of threat he'd warned about. We accept, Selene said. Lyra grabbed her arm. We're not warriors, we're mediators. We're sovereigns, Selene corrected quietly. We have abilities these rogues don't expect. We can do this. Or we can die trying, Finn muttered. Then we die proving we're more than what alphas think we are. Selene looked around the council. Haven accepts Alphacade's challenge. We'll eliminate the rogue threat within 30 days. The assembly erupted in discussion. Some alphas looked impressed by her boldness. Others looked like they were already counting Haven's losses. Ronan caught her eye as the meeting dissolved. His expression was equal parts admiration and concern. She'd just bet everything. Haven's future, the regional council, potentially their lives, on a gamble that they could handle a threat seasoned warriors had failed to eliminate. It was reckless, possibly suicidal, but it was also necessary. Because if Haven was going to exist as more than just mediators, they needed to prove they could protect themselves, could handle real danger, could be more than refugees hiding behind neutrality. They needed to become what Matthias feared, powerful. The preparation took 2 weeks. Selene gathered every combat-capable sovereign in Haven, 20 wolves with various abilities. Not all of them could fight directly, but all of them had power. Lyra could sense pack bonds and emotional states from a distance. Finn could amplify or suppress other wolves' abilities temporarily. Elder could read territorial connections, sense weaknesses and group cohesion. Others had their own unique skills: command, manipulation, sensing, binding. We're not going in as warriors, Selene told them as they planned. We're going in as sovereigns. We use our abilities, not physical strength. The rogues won't care about abilities when they're ripping our throats out, one of the younger sovereigns said nervously. Then we make sure they don't get that close. Selene spread a map across the table. Lyra, can you sense the rogue pack's emotional state from a distance? If I get within a mile, yes. Good. Finn, how many wolves can you suppress at once? 5, maybe 6, for about 2 minutes. Elder, I can sense their pack structure. Who's dominant, who's loyal, who's only there out of fear or necessity. Selene smiled. Then here's what we do. We don't attack them. We break them apart from the inside. Over the next week, they executed the plan in stages. First, Lyra and a scouting team positioned themselves near the rogue camp. She read emotions, identified tensions and conflicts within the group. Their leader is brutal, Lyra reported back. Keeps control through fear and violence. At least 15 wolves are only staying because they're terrified of what happens if they leave. Perfect, Selene said. That's our opening. Second stage, Elder and 2 other sovereigns infiltrated the outer edges of the camp, using their ability to suppress their own presence. They identified the wolves most likely to defect, young, scared, or recently exiled wolves who'd had violence forced on them. We can turn at least 10 of them, Elder confirmed. Maybe more. Third stage. Selene herself, along with Finn and 3 others, approached the camp openly, under a white flag, requesting parley. The rogue leader, a massive scarred wolf called Rake, met them with obvious hostility. "Haven doesn't have authority here," he snarled. "Turn around or die." "We're not here to claim authority," Selene said calmly. "We're here to offer an alternative." "To what?" "To living like hunted animals, raiding settlements, waiting for the day some Alpha's army finally catches you." She gestured to his camp. "You've got 50 wolves here. How many are actually loyal to you versus just too afraid to leave?" Rake's expression darkened. "Loyalty doesn't matter. Strength does. Strength is what got most of these wolves exiled in the first place. They challenged the wrong Alpha, questioned the wrong order, refused to submit." Selene's voice carried through the camp, reaching wolves beyond just Rake. But what if there was a place where exiled wolves could live without fear, where strength wasn't the only currency? "You're talking about Haven." "I'm talking about giving your wolves a choice. Stay here and live as rogues, raiding and hiding until someone kills you. Or come to Haven. Get training, get support, get a chance to be something more than exiles." "And I suppose I'd have to submit to you? Accept your authority?" "No. You'd have to accept Haven's rules. No violence against residents, contribution to the community, respect for neutrality. But you'd keep your autonomy, keep your pride. You'd just be doing it somewhere safe." Rake laughed. "You think I'm stupid enough to walk into a trap? I think you're smart enough to recognize when you're losing." Selene nodded toward the surrounding forest. "You've noticed your outer sentries haven't reported in. Your scouts have been quieter than usual. That's because we've already made contact with at least a third of your wolves, offered them the same choice. Many have accepted. It was a bluff. They'd contacted maybe 10 wolves, not a third of 50. But Rake didn't know that." "You're lying." "Am I? Ask them yourself. See which ones still answer your calls." Rake's expression shifted into something uglier. "You're trying to break my pack." "I'm offering your pack freedom. There's a difference." Selene held his gaze. "You can fight me. Try to hold them through fear and violence. Maybe you'll succeed for a while. Or you can accept that the world's changing, that rogues don't have to be refugees anymore, that there's another way." For a moment she thought he'd attack, thought her gamble had failed. Then one of the younger wolves stepped forward. "I want to hear more about Haven." Then another. "Me too." And another. Within an hour, 20 wolves had defected, simply walked away from Rake's authority and toward the alternatives Selene offered. Rake watched them go with murder in his eyes. "You think you've won? I think I've given wolves a choice. What you do with the ones who stay is up to you." Selene turned to leave, then paused. "But if you keep raiding, keep killing, keep making yourself a regional threat, the Alphas will come for you. And next time, it won't be mediators offering alternatives. It'll be warriors offering death." She walked away with 20 New Haven residents and the knowledge that she'd just neutralized a major threat without killing a single wolf. The news spread fast. Haven had handled the northern rogues not through combat, but through conversion, through offering something better than violence. When Selene returned to the regional council 4 weeks later, even Matthias looked grudgingly impressed. "You actually did it," he said. "Took apart a rogue pack without starting a war." "We offered them what they needed: safety, community, purpose. Turns out that's more powerful than fear. Or you're more dangerous than I thought." But Matthias's smile wasn't entirely hostile. "Fine. Ironwood supports Haven's inclusion in the regional council. You've earned it." The vote was unanimous. 12 packs, all agreeing to formal cooperation, all acknowledging Haven as neutral territory with equal voting rights. Selene stood before the assembled Alphas, no longer a rejected mate, no longer a powerless rogue, but a leader in her own right. "This is just the beginning," she told them. "We've proven cooperation works. Now we build on it. Shared security networks, resource exchanges, educational programs. We create something sustainable, something that doesn't require constant war to maintain." "And if some packs refuse to cooperate," one Alpha asked, "if they see this alliance as weakness, then we prove them wrong, together." Selene's voice was steady. "The old way. Individual packs fighting for every scrap of territory. That's dying. We can fight the change and die with it, or we can adapt and build something better. It was everything she'd learned in the past year and a half. Everything rejection and exile and survival had taught her. Power wasn't just strength. It was influence, necessity, the ability to provide value others couldn't ignore. And she'd become valuable in ways no one had anticipated. The council session ended with formal treaties signed, alliances acknowledged, Haven's status confirmed. Selene should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt tired. She found herself alone on Haven's observation deck that night, looking out over the territory she'd built. 50 permanent structures now. 100 sovereigns, visiting delegations from 6 different packs. You did it. She didn't turn. Didn't need to. The bond told her Ronan was there. Did what? Changed everything. Built something new. Proved that rejection wasn't the end. He moved to stand beside her, careful to maintain distance. I'm proud of you. I didn't do it for your approval. I know. That's what makes it meaningful. Ronan was quiet for a moment. I made a mistake, 18 months ago, when I rejected you. I know. I told myself it was about strength, about bloodlines and worthy mates and pack future. But really? His voice dropped. I was afraid. Afraid that accepting a mate I couldn't control or predict meant admitting I wasn't strong enough to handle uncertainty. Selene finally looked at him. And now? Now I've watched you build an entire community on uncertainty, on taking wolves no one wanted and making them valuable, on proving that control isn't the same as power. Ronan's eyes met hers. You were never weak. I was just too weak to see your strength. Is this where you ask me to come back? To accept the mate bond and return to Blackthorn Ridge? No, because that would be asking you to give up what you've built, to diminish yourself to fit into my world. Ronan's smile was sad. I rejected you once. I won't make the same mistake by asking you to reject yourself now. The words hit harder than any declaration of love could have. Then why are you here? To tell you I'm sorry. Not because I want forgiveness. Not because I expect a second chance, but because you deserve to hear it. Ronan's voice was rough with emotion. I'm sorry I didn't see you. Sorry I hurt you. Sorry I threw away something precious because I was too proud and stupid to recognize its value. You deserved better then. You deserve better now. Selene felt tears pricking her eyes. The apology she'd wanted 18 months ago. The acknowledgement she'd needed. It didn't fix anything. Didn't erase the pain or heal the wound. But it mattered. Thank you, she said quietly. I'll support Haven however I can. Blackthorn Ridge is yours to call on. Ronan started to leave, then paused. And if someday, maybe years from now, if you ever decide you want to explore what we could have been, I'll be here, waiting, however long it takes. He walked away, leaving Selene alone with the bond and her thoughts. She could call him back, could say that yes, she wanted to try again, that 18 months had been enough time to heal, enough distance to forgive. But that would be a lie. The truth was messier, more complicated. She didn't hate Ronan anymore, had moved past that anger into something softer, but no less certain. She understood now that his rejection had come from his own fears and limitations, not from any real weakness in her. But understanding wasn't the same as reconciliation. She'd built a life without him, built herself into someone who didn't need an alpha's validation or a mate's acceptance. Someone who'd found power in ways the wolf world had never imagined. Going back, even to a better, changed Ronan, felt like regression. So she let him walk away. Let the bond ache. Let the possibility of reconciliation hang in the distance like a door neither of them was ready to walk through. Maybe someday. Maybe never. Either way, she'd be fine. Because the greatest gift Ronan's rejection had given her wasn't power or status or revenge. It was the certainty that she could survive anything, build anything, become anything, without needing anyone's permission but her own. 6 months after the regional council's formation, Haven celebrated its second anniversary. 150 sovereigns now called it home. 12 packs actively participated in regional cooperation. Territorial conflicts were down by 70%. Rogue activity had dropped dramatically as exiled wolves found safer alternatives. Selene stood before the gathered community, sovereigns, visiting alphas, representatives from allied packs, and felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years, complete. Not because she'd found her mate, not because she'd gained power or status or revenge, but because she'd found herself, her purpose, her place in a world that had tried very hard to erase her. 2 years ago, she told the assembly, I was weak, rejected, cast out, left to die in the wilderness by an alpha who saw no value in me. Most stories would end there. The weak wolf dies, the strong wolf wins, the natural order prevails. She smiled, but that's not what happened, because I survived. And in surviving, I learned something the alphas hadn't counted on. That weakness isn't permanent. That strength comes in forms they never imagined. That power isn't just about combat or conquest or control. Her eyes found the crowd, found familiar faces, Lyra, Elder, Finn, found newer members who'd come seeking safety and found community instead, found visiting alphas who'd learned to respect what they'd initially dismissed, found Ronan standing at the back, watching her with something like wonder. We built Haven from nothing, from broken wolves and rejected bloodlines and powers the world wanted to forget. We proved that cooperation could be stronger than conquest, that wisdom could be more valuable than violence, that there was another way. She paused, letting the words settle. This isn't the end of our story. It's the beginning, because now we take what we've built here and spread it. We show the wolf world that the old ways, the violent ways, the ways that say strength only comes through dominance, those ways are dying, and we're what comes next. The assembly erupted in applause. Cheers, howls of approval. Selene stood in the center of it all and finally understood what she'd become. Not just a sovereign, not just a leader, but a symbol of what happens when you refuse to accept the world's definition of worthless, when you take rejection and transform it into revolution, when you turn pain into power, not for revenge, but for rebuilding. The rejected mate who became something far more dangerous than an alpha's equal. She became the beginning of everything new. Later that night, after the celebrations had died down, Selene found herself alone at Haven's highest point. The observation deck overlooked the entire valley, their territory, their achievement, their future. The bond still ached, still connected her to Ronan despite the distance and time and everything unresolved between them. But for the first time since the claiming ceremony, the ache felt bearable, manageable, like something she could live with instead of something that would destroy her. She'd never stop being Ronan's fated mate. The bond was permanent, unbreakable in that fundamental way. But she'd stopped being defined by it, stopped letting it determine her worth or her future. And maybe that was enough. Maybe being unbreakable wasn't about never getting wounded. It was about learning to carry your scars without letting them cripple you. Learning to acknowledge pain without letting it consume you. Learning that sometimes the greatest strength was simply refusing to break. Selene looked out over Haven and smiled. She'd been rejected for being weak, cast out for being worthless, dismissed as nothing. And in response, she'd built an empire of nothing, an alliance of worthless wolves, a sanctuary for the weak. And somehow, against all odds and expectations, it had become everything. Not because she'd proven the alphas wrong, but because she'd proven herself right. She was enough, had always been enough, would always be enough, with or without a mate, with or without acceptance, with or without anyone's validation but her own. The rejected wolf who refused to disappear, who became instead the legend they could never escape.